Geronimo.
We are back.
Yes, it's nice to be
Welcome.
back.
Yes. And it's been a long week for us. And from what I understand, the TARDIS malfunctioned, and it's actually been like months for you guys. So sorry about that. But if we go back in time, we'll cross our own timeline. And then I have to get everyone to get me twice as many birthday presents, and it's just not worth it. So apologies for the gap, but I can tell you we had a great week. So
And I wouldn't want to do that, because then I might run into the 37th Doctor, which when we get when you get up to like the 50th Doctor, like how do you keep from meeting it's going to be impossible. Like there's just going to be like doctors everywhere.
well, I mean, Russell T Davies had the Doctor stating he could regenerate 507 times, I think, or something, in a Sarah Jane Adventures story.
Yep.
And so, and at first we thought, well, that's silly. We know the number's 13, but now it sounds like that big number might actually have been right. And the fourth Doctor once said he was in his 90th incarnation. So again, this is starting to look fairly plausible.
Indeed. All right. Well, then that's me. I'm the 27th Doctor.
I am Brian the Meep, not to be confused with the deadly assassin Brian the Ood. So,
so why are we back? What are we talking about?
Oh, well, first of all, I should need to say the other is not going to make it tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, he just forgot this podcast is a thing that we do. He was not in the TARDIS with us when we accidentally skipped several months forward in time, and so I need to find his new address and track him down and tell him we're recording again. So, apologies, that's my fault. So
that's so typical of the other.
Well, it's always something. So you didn't contact me for 10 months. So yes, but here we are, 27th Doctor and Brian the Meep. And we were going to be discussing the Star Beast, not to be confused with Doctor Who and the Star Beast, which is very similar, but not quite the same. So yes, Star Beast. I think I had a splash picture we could throw up there. I think.
Oh yeah, of the Doctor Who and the Star Beast, you mean, right?
Well, there we go. There's the original. So yes, back in the 1970s. Well, it's not even the original. That's the reprint. So which I have right here, the reprint, not the original, because I'm not that cool. Oh, so there we go.
Oh, there it is.
And let's see.
Sometimes you just turn into the TARDIS console.
Yes. So there was the Doctor being throttled by his companion, and the Meep is up there on the stand on his little walking chair, remote walker, tripod walker thing, laughing evilly as the companion tries to throttle the Doctor and knock him off one of the gantries in the steelworks. So, and I guess there's this picture, though I think we have a better one of this one that we can put up. So, and these are the color reprints that were done by the Marvel for the US when they had a short run of releasing the old the Doctor Who magazine. Well, I guess first it started out in 1980. Between February and April, Doctor Who magazine published a story, four short parts, called Doctor Who and the Star Beast, in their comic book, which ran at the back of the magazine every month, or was it still weekly at that point? I'm not sure. At first it was Doctor Who Weekly, then it became Doctor Who Monthly, and then it became Doctor Who Magazine. And yeah, it's basically the exact same story, only with the fourth Doctor and the world's first Black Doctor Who companion, Sharon, who the Doctor picks up in this story. And and they
So,
meet the Meep.
they swap out. Well, we get our first trans companion, right? Well, companion for an episode.
Yes, yes. If you take all the bits that Rose played and all the bits that Donna played and mash them together into one person, you would kind of have the role Sharon plays.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
admittedly, there's no Sharon Doctor thing going on. It's Sharon is just a human who has not had her brain screwed up by spending time with the Doctor, because that was her first adventure. But in the comic, she
Right.
gets to go with the Doctor, and they go off and have many more comic book adventures together. And as you can see, K9 is also a part of the original story.
I know. Now I'm thinking they should have thrown K9 into the special.
Well, apparently, Chris Chibnall wanted to put K9 into Power of the Doctor a year ago and
Oh,
couldn't get the
wow.
rights. So I don't know whether Russell T Davies could have gotten the rights if he wanted them or not. I think between Rose and Donna's mother, there's and Unit, there's enough characters going on in this story.
And Sean, it's the same Sean that she married too. They brought back the same actor from
Yes.
that quick scene that Donna, right? Like,
Yeah.
And he got a much bigger part in the.
Yes, that worked out for him. It just took a while, so he really had to wait for that to fully come to fruition.
Doctor Who definitely plays the long game, not just with its storylines, but also with its performers and its characters. So it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, William Russell has the world record for longest gap between appearing on on a TV show as the same character, between playing Ian Chesterton in The Chase and Power of the Doctor. That was a lot of decades. So yeah, never say no, that they won't just bring you back. They will.
This was well, we'll talk about it later. I have a lot to say about this episode, but carry on.
Yes. Anyway, so yes, the comic is actually very similar to the TV episode. It's a little longer. There's a few more scenes in the middle, but it's basically the same thing. The original comics were black and white, and when Marvel reprinted them for the US in their rather aborted run, they colorized them, as you can see. And if you notice the colors of everything on the front, there's something a little different going on there that you might spot. And that is
scarf.
Oh yeah, there's a scarf, but yes, the Meep is blue.
Oh, well, yeah. I was actually, that's so funny that you mentioned that, because I actually thought of that, but now I'm like, it's got to be something else. He's
No.
but yes.
In the original comic, he's supposed to be white. They literally say in the dialogue that he's a white furball. But apparently, when the colorists got a hold of it to color it for the American re-release, they didn't read the script all that closely and decided he should be blue.
That's fascinating. That's funny.
And when he shows up on the cover of the Big Finish audio adaptation, yes, this comic has also a full cast Big Finish audio version with Tom Baker playing the Doctor. And I assume John Leeson playing K9. I'd have to double check that.
I might have to make the Meep blue in Photoshop from the special.
He's actually a sort of blue-gray on the cover of that. And of course, cool. And it became something of a trivia thing among Doctor Who fans that real Doctor Who fans know the Meep is white. So, on your lore icebergs, do you know who the Meep is was one level of questioning, but then do you know what color the Meep is was another level.
It's so funny. I didn't know this about the Meep. Like, I thought the Meep was kind of a I didn't realize it goes back to 1980 in this comic, but now it makes it a weirder coincidence that Moopsy appeared on Star Trek this year on Lower Decks, and they both have these like moopy names. Like, it's kind of cool. So
I mean, I have to admit, I associate Moopsy more with the Pating from the Jodie Whittaker era. That little spoof on Alien?
Yeah,
there's a short little Stitch-looking alien that can eat spaceships, but doesn't have any interest in hurting people. But it will eat their spaceships, so you'll still die.
That's so
but
funny.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities. What's amusing is that E.T. was in the 80s, right? Right?
Yeah.
This is pre-E.T. Even though this story
80.
feels very much like it's riffing on E.T., but it's
Oh,
distinctly
interesting.
pre-E.T.
Well, imagine
This
if ET turned evil and maniacal and that would like
I think there's a really amazing fan film trailer for that that somebody made. That's really spectacular. They got some of the original actors to come back. It's well, not really. They just got footage of the original actors as adults and photoshopped it in. But it looks really great. There's a great ET sequel trailer. I can't remember the name of it on YouTube. You should track it down. So yes, they made this comic, and then people remembered it so well that they brought the Meep back in the audios. They brought the Meep
Wow.
back in the comics. I think the Wrath Warriors probably show up again too. There's even one where the Meep takes over the BBC where they're filming Doctor Who. Don't think about it too hard.
Well, we haven't
And
gotten to that point in our relationship yet, but I've always maintained that there is a Doctor Who TV show in the Doctor Who universe, and that's who what's his face Tarkin
well, I mean, the expanded universe has Professor X, where
right.
Professor X is very clearly just Doctor Who with the name changed. And like Professor X got canceled in the late 80s. Professor X
Oh.
came back in an American reboot in the 90s. Professor X it's like really kind of parallels beat for beat the whole thing. But yes, and then Big Finish did a full cast audio adaptation of the comics for their volume 1 of the comic adaptations. And as far as I can tell, there's
Wow.
never been a volume 2. So I guess it didn't sell well, but you can still buy the original. If you want to go to Big Finish, you can hear Tom Baker performing the Meep, or you can just track down the comic, which I think has been reprinted in a trade paperback titled The Iron Legion, which was another story that was published, I think, right before or after this one. I can't remember.
I wonder if they tried to get Tom Baker to perform the Meep again.
I doubt it, but I mean, I could look, but I doubt it. But
That would have
uh,
been cool, yeah.
so
I
uh,
liked whoever
yeah,
played the Meep was
the
great, yeah.
audio drama has the actual Meep songs, I believe, that are in the comic, such as "Hoppity Hop, Boppity Bop," "Who's Next for the Chop," and and their they're marching off to war cries and stuff like chants and stuff, and you actually get to see cutaways to the Meep homeworld where all the Meep are killing people and stuff in the comic. So yeah,
So, were the Meep inspired by the Tribble?
it's possible. I mean, certainly by
Like, that's kinda
1980,
like
I'm
what
sure the writers um, must have been aware of tribbles. Oh God, I don't have the writers here. Uh,
'cause, from the Klingon perspective, a Tribble is a Meep. Like
I
like, so
suppose. Um, let's see here. Now I'm trying to remember uh, who came up with the. Let's see. Yes, Pat Mills and John Wagner came up with the original story, and apparently, I'm a bad nerd because I don't know much about comic books, especially outside of Doctor Who. But apparently, those are some pretty big names, and they worked on Watchmen and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Uh,
Oh, okay.
and so those are apparently some pretty big names. Judge Dredd, they did a lot of Judge Dredd comics as well. So
I'm a
um,
very bad comic book person too,
yeah.
but I know those titles.
Yeah,
They're very
yeah. There were some other titles that I didn't know, but I suspect if you know about British comics, they're probably obvious. Um, so, uh, anyway, it's been remade multiple times. In fact, it might hold the record of most different media forms, because now there's a novelization of the TV episode out and an audio reading of the novelization. So there are two-way audio ways you can experience the Star Beast. You can do the
That's
Tom Baker
amazing.
full cast audio drama based on the original comic, or the audio reading of the novelization by Gary Russell, which is
I
based on the
see.
TV version.
I
So
see us getting some homework to do for future episodes.
well, in another timeline, I might have tried to do all of them and we could discuss all of them, but we decided it was best to get this episode out in a hurry.
Yes.
So a contender might be the Daleks, which has, of course, a TV episode, a novel, a audio novel read by Ian Chesterton, which, since it's told from his point of view, is actually really wonderful. Basically, he's in character for the entire reading. And
Cool.
then they did a movie adaptation with Peter Cushing, which was also adapted into a comic book. And of course, now there's the brand new version of the Daleks, which is the old Daleks re-edited from cutting about almost half of every episode down to 75 minutes total running time instead of 7 26-minute episodes, and they colorized it. So there's yet another version of the Daleks. So that was good. And Shada has a lot of versions, but I don't want to get into that tonight.
Oh yeah,
Shada is a whole episode. So it's certainly
Very
up
cool.
there near the top as far as number of different versions available to choose from. So yes, here we go. A white meep as it was originally intended. Again, the comics we were looking at were American reprints. As you can see, the Wraith Warriors, they look exactly like they do in the comic.
Yeah.
They've got the big pincher arm and the ray gun and the little antenna, and they just took the design. And the Meep too is basically the same. He's a little less round. In the original, in the comic, he's very spherical, and in this thing, you calling him a ball of fur is appropriate, but he's not exactly a perfect sphere with a face. He's a really
cool. He's a really cool character, though. The creature work was amazing. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yep. And so this version was released on November 25th, 2023, to help celebrate the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. It was made by the BBC, and it was written, or at least the scripted, since so much of the plot comes from here, scripted by Russell T Davies. And yes, we talked about the inspirations and the coordinates, space-time coordinates for this story are London, pretty clearly, and 15 years after 2009, so that's 2024. And so we're continuing to adhere to Russell T Davies. All my Doctor Who stories take place 1 year ahead of when they were broadcast.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
However, that would mean that pretty much the rock bottom, the oldest that Rose could be is 14. Does she look 14 to you?
I've seen 14-year-old people that look mature, but I would have pegged Rose to be at 17.
Yeah.
I thought like a senior, like an American equivalent to a senior in high school, but
yeah. But if you go back and look at that wedding scene, there's no baby there. And that they explicitly said the wedding, Donna getting married, happened
in 2009.
In 2009 / 15 years ago.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, like, did baby Rose not attend her parents' wedding?
I'll just cite that when you are friends with the Doctor, things can happen later in the Doctor's life, but that could affect your past. That might not be something you tell the Doctor. What I'll just say is, look at River Song. Amy and Roy never got to like raise her because she just was an adult. Like she was a baby and then she was an adult, like
Yeah,
from
but
their
Amy and Rory
perspective.
know somebody stole their baby, whereas Donna seems completely oblivious to the idea that somebody might have nipped
Because
off and if she
she
missed
keeps
3 years
missing
of her baby's growth.
well, that would be a character with the whole keep missing things because of the meta crisis
I feel
block.
I mean, the show wants us to believe that Donna's a good mother. I think
Yeah,
that
no,
the
I
show
agree.
is really emphasizing that she is not at all like her mother, which I liked. I like the fact that
I
Donna's mother was kind of a real piece of work. And I like the fact that Donna turned out to be a really good mother and not at all like her mother. her mother. So,
I mean, at 14, I'm thinking of like 14 years old when I was like
yeah.
14, and it was like a different story. But now that I think of it, it's like 14-year-olds do dress up nicer, it seems, these days than I think they should.
Yeah.
like because Rose was like dressed like how I imagine. Maybe things are different in the UK, but in the United States, you kind of graduate like how you can like wear makeup. What
Yeah.
age you can wear makeup and like all that stuff. And I don't know what it is for girls. So girls in the audience, you got to tell us what's the what's the appropriate age to like dress like Rose was dressed. Maybe 14 is the right age. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying physically. I mean, I know we usually cast older people. Carol Ann Ford was like 21 when she was playing 16-year-old Susan,
Yeah, it's
but
true.
I didn't have near as much trouble accepting Susan as a 16-year-old as I do having accepting Rose as a
Yeah,
14-year-old.
because the actor's 20, and so yeah, you can kind of like get away with like older teenager, but I thought I thought like it just didn't I think that 14 and 17 are so close that like whatever we can just give it.
Yeah,
Oh wow, I didn't think of my printer. I hope that didn't come out on on tape. But we could just give the show a pass and just be like, this actor, I can pretend this actor's 14. It's fine. Like
yeah. I mean, or
uh,
or the baby was born before the wedding, but
right, that could
we
have happened
don't
too.
see it seems like when they come out and everyone's cheering and throwing
Some
rice, where's the baby? Somebody
some
would be holding
people
this little toddler.
I could see Donna being like, or maybe even Neris being like, "Oh, crying babies." So that maybe there was like a nursery where all the kiddos of the wedding were hanging out with like a caretaker or something like that. Like, because I went to a wedding recently where there was a pen like where they put all the kids.
Yeah,
So it
I,
could be that Rose was in that little playpen.
it might be easier to believe
Yeah.
than that Rose is 14. So,
Right. Yeah. It might be easier to believe that. That's easier than my Doctor Who theory too of like time travel shenanigans. So yeah.
well, I mean,
Play
there's a little
if
bit
you
because they,
eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, Brian, must
yeah,
be the truth.
because she gets her memory wiped in 2009, and they say that that happened 15 years ago. But she
Right.
gets married in spring of 2010 when they
Oh.
a little bit, and she wins the lottery and all that. So yeah, and then we don't see any sign of this baby at that point. But so is she born afterwards or before, and just not be participating in the wedding ceremony in that little clip we saw of it? But you
Right.
think the parents would be hanging on to the baby while she's up there, and
That's
Will
not a
Forte
thing.
saying,
Like especially that was a very and it was a very formal wedding. I mean, it was like I don't think it's a thing. I don't think making the children part of the wedding would have been a thing in the night, in like that time. Maybe it's more of a thing now, but yeah, I don't think people make children a part of the wedding,
all
except
right,
to do the whole cute walking down the aisle to deliver the flower, like the
yeah,
flower
the
kids or
ring or
whatever,
something, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, no, my family insisted I had to have a little kid dressed up in a suit drive the Dalek with my wedding ring down the aisle.
that's
So I
is
would
that
have,
what really?
yeah, yeah, we had a little. I have a remote
That's
control Dalek
amazing.
just for the wedding, and it had the ring tied on the sucker arm and a little bow tie on the Dalek, and it drove down. But
That's
I wanted
amazing.
to
Oh
just
my
drive
gosh.
down by itself. But she was all, my mom was like, no, no, we need a cute little kid. I've got this cute kid, and the little kid could drive the Dalek, but the kid was so tiny and young, couldn't really run the controls.
Is there video footage of this? Like, that would be amazing.
Not very good footage because they're kind of on the
Okay.
other side of all the rows of pews, so you can kind of see the kid bobbing there, but the Dalek doesn't really show up until the very end. I've got some photos
That's
of the
funny.
Dalek with a bow tie, but
We gotta see that next time. That's cool.
and I got the wedding ring of Rassilon, which is probably totally failing to show up, but it's got a little seal of Rassilon on it.
Oh, very cool.
So, right. So anyway, I guess 2000. I guess blah, 2024. We're looking at here. So, do you want to give us a story summary?
Yeah, so the 14th incarnation of the Doctor, for some weird reason, has assumed a previous Doctor's face. This would be the third time that this Doctor has done that, by the way. That the Doctor has
Yeah.
assumed this face. It's a favorite. It's a fan favorite of the Doctors. But anyways, and so after a couple of trips here and there, including one to visit Davros, I guess. Uh, he ends up here in are they in Chiswick or are they in London? I
London
remember.
was what the
They're in London.
Wikipedia page
Yeah,
said.
and I think the opening it's well established that it was London. So they end up in London, and by some coincidence, the Doctor runs into none other than Donna Noble. And she doesn't recognize him, of course, but there's an immediate danger. And he's like, oh, this is so weird. Like, I regenerated into this face. The TARDIS then, I end up here, and now I'm here with Donna. He meets Donna's daughter, Rose, who's trans, so born male, but transitioned to female. And then also Donna's husband. And before he meets Donna's husband, a spaceship crashes, and Donna misses it. Of course, everyone else sees it, but Donna misses it. And so then so the Doctor's like, "Oh, I gotta get this cab," and the cab happens to be driven by Donna's husband, Sean. So the Doctor immediately gets thrown right back into the noble Temple family. And and on top of that, there's this like spaceship that didn't actually crash, that also dropped a piece somewhere, and it all kind of like comes together. And there's this meep that we've been talking about, that at first is acting like innocent and scared and like cute, and everyone's like remarking at how cute it is. But then we find out later in the episode that it's actually this awful evil creature, the last of its species. But it really is just so awful. Like, it only wants to dominate. Its mind is poisoned by a psychedelic sun. And like, it also uses the power of the psychedelic sun it's really wild stuff. It's great. But it uses the power of the psychedelic sun to also influence others, like the unit soldiers. But anyways, the Doctor gets thrown back into Donna's life, and they're playing this game of like trying not to get Donna to remember him, but slowly and surely she does start to remember him. And what I love about this episode the most is like, I always felt sad for Donna, like after her adventures with the Doctor in series 3, and that he had to do that to her. It's heartbreaking. So so for the meta crisis to be resolved, even if it meant for her to die, was actually something I was really looking forward to. Like, I was like, yeah, and this is like something that's been in the side of my what about this meta crisis, like the Dr. Donna, like what are we gonna do about this? So that was the most exciting part for me, was that, even though it was a little bit like kind of derivative of like his scenes with Wilf, and we'll get into all that, like, I'm sure, in our discussion. But overall, like he and Donna work together to foil the meep that's trapped. They're trapped in the meep starship. And like, they manage to do it. They do this. Donna becomes the Dr. Donna, and they do it, and then she dies in his arms. It's all very sad. But it turns out that because Donna had a child, the meta crisis actually divided the power of the Time Lords, and it went into Rose. And so now Rose is another aspect of this meta crisis. So for one moment, we have three incarnations of the Doctor working together.
Or as it's known at Titan Comics, Tuesday.
Tuesday. Brilliant. But anyways, so once that's solved, Donna doesn't die, which is also great, kind of Doctor Who surprise everybody lives kind of thing. Uh we also learned that something still has to be done about the Time Lord thing. And so Rose and Donna kind of school the Doctor and let him know that, you can just let go. Like, and so they're able to just let go of the power of the Time Lords, which I was very jealous of. I was like, let me bottle that power up into a jar and I'll take it off your hands. But so that solves that whole issue. Donna's able to kind of live and remember all these great adventures that she went on. The heartbreak of that is finally resolved, and it was very satisfying. And so then and I haven't mentioned that Sylvia Noble is in this episode, and she's brilliant too. But anyways, they even make mention of Wilf. We get a really cool new science advisor at Unit. What was her character's name?
Ooh. You say it at the beginning, and then
I will remember, because I took a note. I took note of it. But anyways, we get just like kind of the same. It's very much what the house style of Russell T Davis was, but like updated
Shirley,
with like a
yes,
Shirley. Thank you.
Shirley and Bingham.
That's right. Thank you, Shirley Bingham. That's a good name. That's like a Matt Smith would say that name really well. Shirley Bingham. But anyways, um, you get very much the house style of Russell T Davies, which I like. But anyways, Donna, you know, and the gang are all happy. Everything's resolved, and they're saying goodbye to the Doctor. And the Doctor's like, "Oh, don't you just want to go for one quick ride? Like maybe we can go and see Wilf or something." And Donna's like, "Okay, let's do it." And her family doesn't need any convincing. So she tries to like get out of it by saying like, "Oh, Sean's gonna be jealous," and he's like, "I would normally be, but not in this circumstance." So they get into the TARDIS, and the TARDIS is just this. As you can see, we've got it all plastered all over here, but the TARDIS is just this like shell, like the inside of an eggshell. It's beautiful. It's like we're inside like a genie's bottle, almost like I Dream of Jeannie, like that kind of design, if you will. But we've got the roundels are everywhere now, and like and they change color, and so like the TARDIS can have like moods that are like it always could do it, but like now it has like these crazier moods, and it can. I think they're going to use it as a way to tell like a visual story, a different way of communicating with the TARDIS than we've seen before. I hope. Anyways, it's going to be cool. So the Doctor runs around in his new TARDIS console room, and he is just so excited, and Donna approves. And so then they have a coffee machine, which I thought was weird that it's not like a tea dispenser. Like it's coffee. But anyways, there's a coffee machine right on like a huge component of the console is this coffee machine. And so like he makes a cup of coffee for Donna, and she freaking gets so excited she spills it on the console, and this thing goes up in flames. And I hope they don't just like destroy it. But anyways, that's it. The episode ends, and Bob's your uncle. Oh, I didn't need to mention that we defeated the Meep, of course, but the Meep gets the Meep gets arrested by the Warriors, so that's about it. Oh, and one more thing, that we find out that the sonic screwdriver can do things that previously we hadn't seen before, and I love that. We'll talk about it in more detail.
Oh, yes. I'm going to assume that this is the new Sonic and that the old Sonic couldn't do some of these things. Like they make a big deal about how hard it is to resonate concrete in earlier scenes with the sonic screwdriver with earlier models. So I'm going to assume that this is a new upgraded model, then that can also generate these cool force field walls, which are like, wow, okay then.
I was loving it. And like you just draw it, like you could just draw something. And like he had a screen. Earlier
Yeah,
in the
yeah, he
episode, he
created
created
this
like a
little hologram
little
screen
hologram screen and was doing
with
tactical analyses or whatever. Yeah, it
something.
was
Yeah,
like really
I
cool.
have to admit I was staring at it trying to figure out what the heck is that. But
He was
so
looking at the ship, and he was kind of like trying to see what it was all about. But yeah, it was cool.
so um oh, to take us back to the comic one more time, I realized I remembered one of the things I was really sad about, and I'll probably have to switch off this virtual wall, I think. Let's see. That is not how you do it. Camera.
If you hold it up to your like, sometimes I don't
Uh,
know.
let's see. Oh, here we go. Duh. There we go. My much less exciting background. So
Oh, but it's a cool background.
with but yes, if you look right there is my favorite scene from the comic and several other people's, where the doctor sits down with the Wrath Warriors at this lady's house and she fixes them tea and cake. They all sit around eating the tea and cake and discussing how the meep is actually this horrible, horrible thing.
That's
And
funny.
we see that they've got this little xenomorph style mouth tongue that can leap out and stick out and grab the cake and pull it into their mouths. And you can see he's got a little teacup in his hands.
That's funny.
And I'm like, I can't believe we didn't get them all sitting around Donna's house doing that, because that would have been amazing.
That would have been amazing. We got the cool judge doctor scene though. That was kind of fun.
Yes, that was fun. But yeah, so that was my probably my single biggest complaint, to skip ahead to the bad, is that we did not
Oh,
get
okay.
the
The dinner scene.
yeah. But I guess let's talk a little bit about the characters. Do we see any meaningful difference between this 10th Mark 3 10th Doctor, and as you said, there's a Mark 2 and Mark 1?
Hello? Oh,
Hello.
we're back.
Oh
Oh,
yes.
we had a glitch. There was like some kind of glitch going on. That was weird.
Okay.
Does it look like I'm Oh, so I do feel like that he may have incorporated a little bit of Jodie into his performance, or at least there was maybe something about it felt, maybe it's just my recency bias because Jodie was just there, that I'm like, oh, David Tennant's doing an homage to
Yeah.
Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. But I don't know. I do think that like if he's doing it, it's just very brief. I think otherwise he's very similar.
Yeah.
He has the memories of his 11 through 13, but
Yeah.
he's acting just like 10.
Yeah. Yes. And we've got this kind of case where, oh, look, it seems like are all the doctors turning into the 10th Doctor? Why is there so much 10th Doctor? But the flip side is the Doctor was 2009 when the Doctor was 900 when he became the first 10th Doctor. And then
Right.
3 years later, when he was 2000, or when he was 903, he regenerated into the second 10th Doctor
10th Doctor. Right.
after only 3 years. And then 3 years after that, he regenerated into Matt Smith. So he
That's
was
right.
only the 10th Doctor for 6 years, which by far, if you look at it from the Doctor's point of view, makes him the shortest reigning Doctor of any of them that we know. Now, I guess those
Oh.
kid doctors back with the timeless child, probably some of them didn't look like they got necessarily 6 years. But so maybe. But even then, it was probably pretty close to 6 years, looking at the way they age up, 4 or 5 years
Yeah,
at least.
yeah.
So he's basically one of the shortest running doctors in universe of all time, even if he feels like he's one of the longest running doctors out of universe, because he keeps coming back and showing up and stuff like that. So, and I wonder, I get he's still very much still coming to terms with his weird face looking, his return to a previous form. So I have to assume this is not all that many days after the end of Power of the Doctor, for the Doctor's point of view, because he's still getting used to the idea that he looks like David Tennant again. And if he's going to turn into Ncuti Gatwa at the end of the third special, he might still be one of the shortest incarnations ever. He might be weeks
Indeed,
or
actually,
something.
yeah, that's
Though
true.
if he
Yeah,
doesn't
you're
quote
right.
his age, Big Finish will continue to stuff 10th Doctor adventures in there as long as David Tennant is willing to show up and record.
So
There's
true.
already like 2 seasons of adventures taking place between probably 3 seasons worth of adventures taking place between the waters of Mars and the end of time.
No way. That's
Yes,
funny.
way. They just keep stuffing them in there, and I'm
All
like,
those adventures they hinted at that he did, they're actually fleshing them out. That's so
oh
funny
yes,
because he did. Because actually, wait, that's right. In universe, though, his travel time would be more than 6 years, right? Because no, his travel time was only, you're right. Never mind.
he
My
was
bad.
quoting his age pretty regularly in the Russell T Davies era,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I
it's
do
true.
kind of hope we will return to that, because as a whore for Time Lord continuity and dating chronology of things, every time you get an age from the Doctor, it allows you to really precisely date things relative to some other events. And the Chibnall era had no mentions of the
No
Doctor's age
age.
whatsoever, and the stuff for Capaldi was very vague, like I'm old enough to be your Messiah and stuff like that. Okay, 2,000 years old, but which is about right, but it's not very specific. So um, so I'm hoping that Russell T Davies will start trotting out some age numbers, though knowing Russell, he might just ignore the fact that the Doctor's well into 2,000 years old
Right.
and rewind his age and cause a bunch of problems, because that's what he did back in 2005 when he had Eccleston say he was 900, even though the 7th Doctor was 956.
The also, we call him Tenant Doctor Mark III, or the 10th Doctor Mark III, but he's actually the 14th Doctor.
That does seem to be the official publicity name for the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're going with the 15th Doctor for Ncuti Gatwa's. Like
Yes.
we already knew. Yeah, so that's interesting because in universe, Matt Smith 11 does mention that I regenerate, like when he's saying, "Oh, you only get 13," he goes, "Well, actually, he uses that instance to
Yeah.
count as a regeneration,"
Mm.
And so I think it's interesting that, like, I don't know, I think they had a chance to redo the order maybe, but like they didn't do it. So it would have been interesting if they just like redid the order, because like I think yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of feel like calling him the 14th Doctor rubs me the wrong way, just because it's the same actor, and I don't think and he's playing him the same, so I don't really feel like at this point, maybe there'll be some more narrative twists coming, but at the moment
The
it feels
setup
kind
for
of,
this happened in the 50th though. Remember the curator,
yeah.
he
Yes,
says, yeah, go ahead.
but
Sorry.
he's called the Curator Doctor, not
Yeah.
like the 507th Doctor.
No, not just that. No, I mean, he said like you'll see some old. I think he's referring to himself, but he's like some old faces may
Yeah.
return, or something
Yeah.
like that. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's like
It's also worth noting that the excellent, in my opinion, audio drama Death Comes to Time takes place with the 7th Doctor, and he dies saving the universe in the story. And you're like, well, I guess a lot of fans just assume, well, this is not part of the mainstream continuity. This is a what if. But I'm like, it could be a future Sylvester McCoy Doctor. That
right. That's
could be the
true.
very last Doctor Who story. It was certainly written to have that weight to it, to be the last Doctor Who story. But they got Sylvester McCoy to play the Doctor, but he's got a different costume, so maybe it's the last Doctor. So
Yeah. So I think also this opens things up. Like, obviously this 10th Doctor is older looking. which is interesting as well. Like because the regen, if we talk about how regeneration works, like it could have looked he could have looked like
Yeah.
2009 David Tennant, like, but this Doctor
Yeah, they
incarnation
acknowledge it
is
in the
older.
text. They're not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
saying he hasn't changed. They don't just say he hasn't changed. They acknowledge it in the text that he looks older. So we are
older.
supposed to
Yeah,
pay attention to that. Unlike, say, in the Five Doctors, when the Doctors look older, and we're just kind of
right.
supposed to ignore that. And then
But what I
I
mean,
guess they eventually explained it in Time Crash, but
yeah,
where Moffat came up with some techno babble. But
I think it'd be interesting if like using this like crisis, we can't call it a meta crisis because that's different, but using this other crisis, because it is a crisis, the Doctor's
yeah,
having a crisis, right? Like
I guess
there's like
he
so
seems
use
pretty
it.
chill with it.
I- but it'd be neat if like it could allow, I mean, we've already had it,
It's
so
the
I don't think
mellow
that's
crisis. It's the mellow
a mellow
crisis.
crisis. We've already had it, and I'm satisfied with the way they've brought the older actors back. But this is another opportunity that they could, now that there's a precedent now, like that the
Yeah.
doctors can return. So it's like you said, Sylvester McCoy could come back as an older version of the Seventh Doctor, but it's actually a future incarnation using the same face. And it's interesting that like the it implies that his subconscious has a way, or maybe the TARDIS is influencing the face, because there's definitely a reason for the face. Like it's important that he has that face
Yeah.
for Donna. You know what I mean?
Given
Like
that he keeps talking about the weird coincidences that are going on, I'm thinking we're going to get to the third special and see it's the toy
right,
maker was pulling
right, of
strings
course. Well,
somehow.
that's who the boss is that the Meep refers to.
Probably,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
like
would
I'm
it
sure.
would be a shocking twist if it wasn't. Let's put it that way.
But it does have it does have the makings. Isn't the toy maker very manipulative and could have put all these things into play? Like,
I mean,
like yeah,
the the original toy maker was basically just Q, but with a racist stereotype dressed up on him, which they have thankfully dropped, it appears, completely from this new version of the toy maker. But yes, so
the
we're still left
celestial
with
toy maker.
basically
Yeah.
Doctor Who Q,
Right.
and that's fine. I'm like, Q versus the Doctor sounds great. Bring it on. But I'm totally down for that. But I especially given that, what, aside from Picard season 2, Q hasn't really done much since, what, the end of the Next Generation. So
That's
it's
right.
not like it
Well, yeah,
isn't
and
time.
Voyager, right? I think he
Yeah, I
had
guess
something to do
Voyager.
with
You're right.
Voyager. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's perfectly fine to bring that type of character back and do
Oh
something
yeah.
for the new generations of people. Uh, so um yeah, I'm guessing in one of the I did all the little expanded universe media. Russell was actually very generous in allowing the expanded universe to develop 14th Doctor stories for the last year, whereas normally there's just a big moratorium on these things until the new episodes come out with the new Doctor, and everyone's stuck writing writing old Doctor the stories with the old Doctor until the new one comes out, which kind of shafted Jodie Whittaker. She has less expanded universe stuff than anybody, because the year she would have gotten of her comics and novels and stuff between all became 14th Doctor stories. But
Oh, that's a shame.
Doctor Who magazine, we're back there again, got to write the first 14th Doctor story, a comic which is basically, what if Jurassic Park, except instead of dinosaurs, it was Dalek themed. We have a Dalek Park where you can come see the Daleks. Yeah, that and it goes exactly like it does in Jurassic Park.
That's funny.
It's actually a
That's
pretty
so
good
funny.
comic. But I did that, and then there was another one where Sigarax trying to blood control the Doctor, and it doesn't work because he doesn't have the exact same DNA as his 10th incarnation. So genetically speaking, he's not quite the same. That was a story
Ah,
point in that one, is that he doesn't have quite the same DNA as the original 10th Doctor does. Um,
interesting.
so when the Sigarax found the blood on the sword that chopped off his hand and used it to blood control the Doctor, they found that it didn't actually work because it wasn't quite the same blood. So he's not. It's not a it's not exactly the 10th Doctor. They went out of their way to write a storyline which explicitly says that he's genetically different.
Yeah. I think at some point regeneration counts won't matter. Like the Doctor will just like kind of be able to at some point be able to just regenerate when they need to.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I think we're already there. The Timeless
yeah,
Child has nigh unlimited regenerations, which I kind of mentally say that's 507 or whatever it was that I always forget the last digit, 500 and something,
right.
that Russell T Davies mentioned. And that where Fourth Doctor might have been the 90th. Sure, that, I mean, it's stated in the TV show. I'm using
Yeah,
television
exactly.
continuity here. You can ask, how does the Doctor remember this now, but not before and not after?
Who knows? Who
But
knows?
yeah, it could just be it's these little flashes of his previous lives.
Yeah.
Um, so we're kind of already there. Nobody is counting. We don't have to worry about running out of regenerations with the
Generations
Doctor,
anymore, yeah.
unless they write a story that suddenly makes us care again. Like they said, oh well, something drained all his regenerations or something. But and I don't think the show is going to be in a hurry to retcon that, because I don't think they don't really like that sword hanging over the character about what happens when we run out of incarnations. I kind of feel
Yeah.
like Russell T Davies was basically doing a bit of bookkeeping when he had Rassilon, or had the Time Lords give him a new cycle of regeneration, which we now know just means Rassilon unlocked his regenerations again. I'm giving you a present. And by present, I mean I'm going to take these handcuffs off. So, oh, thank you. You're such a wonderful person for taking the handcuffs that you left me in for centuries. Um, well, shall we talk about Donna?
Yeah.
Yes. What do we think? She's pretty much the same old Donna.
No, she's different. She's actually different. I saw the difference in the character. I mean, she's at her core, she's the same old Donna, like with the wit and the kind of like
Yeah.
the Donna Noble descending, idea.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant. But I loved her as a mom. I love that she gave away this fortune because like that they're struggling and they don't need to. It's kind of an interesting thing, but it also like it just Donna was so flippant and like uncaring when before she met the Doctor, that it's kind of nice to see her giving, like, it's a weird thing to
Yeah.
think about, but like she's kind of paying her dues back. She's learning
Yeah.
what it's like to suffer a little bit, and all that. I love her as a mother. I loved how that scene between her and Sylvia with Rose. And I think that the evolution of Donna, or who Donna has become, where we find her all these years later, was really fun to see how much she had kind of changed, and like how her life was different from how it was before.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of fans of Donna Noble. She's not my favorite companion. I know there's a lot of people. Our friend Robbie, I think Donna's his favorite companion. So I hope he and others are pleased. I certainly was.
Oh, have you been in contact with Robbie? Did he like the episode?
Yeah, well, he's been tweeting about it. So
Okay.
so,
Okay.
yeah,
Guess I
so
need to
yeah.
get on his
Shout
Twitter
out
feed.
to
Uh,
shout out to Movie Magic, which is his new endeavor that he's doing. So go check out our friend Robbie's stuff on Movie Magic on YouTube.
yeah. Um, yeah, I thought Donna was fun. I'm gonna just come out and say, oh well, it's not something a male representing Time Lord would get. As a male representing human, I didn't get it either. What does that line mean? What is the I let it go. It's not something you would understand, and it's supposed to be a joke. It's clearly played as a beat, but. And
I
maybe I'm
think
just too guy, or maybe I'm just too American. But I was like, what exactly is that referring to? Do you have any ideas?
I think that was just like a way of there's I think that like in order to be we all talk about how we want to be inclusive, but we don't want to do the work. Not
Yeah.
us specifically, but just humans in general.
Yeah.
We want to be inclusive, but we don't want to do the work. And I think that line was doing the work in a sense. Like the joke would have been, oh, a man would never understand this. That's what the joke would have been. But in modern times, like in current times, and especially a year from now when
Yeah.
this story takes place, I think people will, I think, and especially Donna, who has a trans child, would not use that term. Like she's using the term male presenting as a
Yeah.
joke,
Well,
like
yes, but
to like
what
she's
is the
updating.
idea that the doctor wouldn't get? I'm
Oh, just letting it go. I think she's trying to make a joke of like men don't let go of things.
like
Like
hold grudges.
no power, just like letting go of it's power that they're letting
Okay.
go of.
Okay.
It's like so women know how to
See,
let
I
go of
am way too
power, and
cishet to figure
yeah,
this out. I'm sorry.
there you go. Also, you may be exempt from the typical behavioral expectation of holding on to power if you're a man. But no, I think it is a meta commentary on like patriarchy and ending, like just
Okay.
like like all it's a lot to unpack. So don't feel
Men
like
would never stop being lords. That is the basic through line here.
I would say
Is what
so.
she's
That's
saying
good.
is a men would never consider not being a lord as a solution.
There
Okay.
you go.
All
There you
right.
go. I love it. You beautifully
Well, I'm not
you
even sure
beautifully
if
brought
that's
it home.
right. I think that
No,
has
I
to
like
you,
that
but
because that's what a time lord is, right? So
yeah.
yeah, a time lord would not understand giving up the lordship.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly. That's
Now it
great.
makes more sense because I watched it twice and I was like, I feel like this is like a beat with
I
a punchline, and
I
I'm
think
not
it's
getting it at all. What is the big
yeah.
idea here? I mean, I get that. Oh well, we're so Dr. Donna, Dr. Rose is so clever that they can figure out a way to just eject and flush out a symbiotic nuclei. Fine,
I
cool.
don't think it's even about being clever. It's the ability to do it's always there. Like so in a way they're kind of like saying to like this is something the doctor might even be able to do if he had the
Yeah,
focus or the intention to let go of the,
yeah,
of that the time lord power, if you will.
yeah.
But yeah, they're saying, I think they're saying that female presenting beings who go through like what a female would go through, whether you're born a female or you become a female. There's a kind of like a thing that you take on as a female, and that is the power to let go in a weird, does that make
Okay.
sense? Like, and
All right.
that's interesting because now we can talk about the sisterhood of Karn and how this is like a meta commentary on the sisterhood versus the time
Oh
lord,
yeah,
like the
I
whole
have at
thing. So
least
it's like
2 episodes outlined loosely outlined about the Sisterhood of Karn. So, I would love to get into the Sisterhood of Karn at some point. Maybe 3, probably 3 episodes.
Right. So yeah,
So
anyways, it's a huge deal. Like a lot of people don't get it, and there's a lot of criticism about like wokeness. I hate all that stuff. I kind of ignore it. I don't like to give it a spotlight.
mm,
But putting all that aside, of course Doctor Who's going to be progressive. That since day one, it's a show that's about learning and
mm,
like exploration and like I don't understand how people could think that like shows
yeah,
like these would never not want to change with the times and like present like the future, and stuff like that.
yeah,
But regardless, I would say that like on top of being inclusive, which I'm so happy about, on top of being inclusive, it is a huge like kind of weird. It opens up an interesting like layer of discussion around time lords and like the power of the time lords and all that
oh,
I'm sure we
yes.
can have.
Yeah, no, I do wanna get into Time Lord sexism at some point.
I was initially kind of like what do you mean by that, like I think the time lord in me took offense a little bit, like, but I think that's the point. I think that's good.
Well,
Like
again,
that's
anything what you say about the Time Lord
good.
does not automatically translate to what you feel about the Doctor. The
Right,
Doctor is
exactly.
not a normal Time Lord by any
Right,
stretch of the imagination.
right,
Very much the renegade.
right,
In fact, I mean, literally, they've used in some of the spin-off material, they just call him the renegade because they'll
right.
get sued if they call him the Doctor, and
Now
everybody still knows who they're referring to. But
now what's interesting is it would have been interesting if Rose chose Rose Temple, because the Rose Tyler Rose Temple connection would have been there. I want to know more about Rose. I wonder if we'll see Rose again, because why did Rose choose? Because Rose was originally, what was the name the boys were calling her? Her dead name?
Jason.
Jason. So Jason chose the name Rose.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Like, that
I
to
think
me,
they
that's
hint that that's because the Dr. Donna, or the doctor at least, is rattling around
the
in the
meta
back of her.
crisis,
Yeah, yeah,
that's right. And
yeah.
she made, oh wow, she became Rose. Oh, that's interesting. That's
So
interesting.
yeah, or at least she chose Rose because that was something that was important to the doctor. But
To the doctor. That's so
um,
interesting.
and builds
But
her own
also
little TARDIS in the
because
backyard.
Rose is isn't Rose the temporal spirit or whatever, the spirit of the what is it? Sorry, the TARDIS, the heart of the TARDIS. What's that energy called? Like, what didn't Rose?
I mean, she became the bad wolf when she absorbed the energy of the heart of the TARDIS,
Oh, okay.
and
So yeah, could
so
this be that could Rose Noble somehow also?
I mean, did Rose Tyler create Rose Noble when she was the bad wolf?
That's what I'm saying. Well, yeah, the answer is always yes
Yeah,
when you talk about the
I
when you
mean,
talk about
she
the
went and
bad wolf.
changed all sorts of stuff in the Doctor's history, or at least pogo bootstrap paradoxed a bunch of stuff in his
We
life.
haven't talked in ages about Doctor Who together, so we're probably on these weird wild tangents right now. Like we it's
Oh,
like
I want to do I have a whole show loosely planned out about the moment, which we'll get into
excellent,
Bad Wolf extensively when we get around to that. I
excellent.
definitely I have an entire story episode we need to do just on the moment, and how it connects to the Bad Wolf and what that means about Doctor Who, and maybe this is part of that. So we might be end up talking about this again when we get there.
Indeed.
Um, I wanted to echo your remarks. I wanted more Rose. I was really upset that she didn't get into the TARDIS at the end. I
Yeah.
was like, why isn't she getting in the TARDIS? This would
Well,
be
because she's
awesome.
14. She's 14. I think that, like, you have to be at least
Yeah, well, I hadn't
16
done
or
the math in my head to figure out that she was only 14, but because
but
she
that's why
doesn't read as only 14.
I think Donna knows also, like, once you get in the TARDIS, like, it's over. Like, that's it. Like,
Oh,
she's not gonna, like, it's
yeah.
like
I mean, I get that, but let's be honest. The show here is here to do what things that the audience want to see, and the
Yeah.
audience, I think, wants to see Rose in the TARDIS.
I
Um,
think we'll get that. I have
so
a feeling we'll see all of them again, like
yeah.
Sylvia, Rose,
Well,
Sean.
yeah,
I think
they
they'll, yeah.
basically promised they're going to go find Wilfs, and we know
Right.
Wilf was there was by some footage location shooting with Wilf that was done by some fans took some pictures of them filming with Wilf on
With
location.
Bernard Cribbins, yeah.
Yeah, Bernard Cribbins. So there's there before he passed away, and so they shot stuff with Wilf, so
My
presumably we're going to
heart's
get it. Getting
I'm feeling a nice feeling.
yeah.
A sad
No,
feeling, but it's
I
a
am looking forward to that. I assume it's going to be the Toy Maker episode that he comes back, since they're being really cryptic about the next one. Like, I knew everything about this one because of comic book, and Toy Maker kind of writes itself. It's just basically Q versus the Doctor. So, you know what you can kind of expect from that. But the middle
Right, and
one, next
from what
week's
we've
episode,
seen in the trailers, yeah.
yeah, that everything, it's like on a spaceship, and it's scary. And that's everything we know. I mean, it's the Doctor and Donna, and presumably the TARDIS, but it's hardly anything meaningful about that.
Yeah,
So did be, I guess, did Meep work for you as a character? I
yeah,
thought
I
the
thought
makeup and
Meep was,
special effects were fantastic.
yeah, the Meep was so well done, and the transition from the puppet to the CGI was almost seamless. Like, you could definitely tell when, he was more animated with the teeth and everything, but it was really well done. It was
Yeah.
beautifully done, yeah.
Well,
The
what they were doing, I watched part of the behind the scenes featurettes that they've released is it was a puppet, and then they go in with the CGI and add a little bit of extra movement on the puppet's face. So rather than a full
That makes
CGI,
sense.
it's a physical thing that the actors were interacting with, but they'll throw blinks in and make the lips move a little more fluidly, and the ears will wiggle and pull back and up and stuff like that, which is what they did with the Sea Devils in the Jodie Whittaker Sea Devil episode. I can't remember the name of, but
This is one thing that I wish Star Trek would do more of, not to go, not to like lay on Star Trek, but there's not enough of these characters that are like puppets or,
yeah.
like puppeteer. There's not enough
I mean, I
puppeteering in
think they're
Star Trek
doing it with the
with the
Saurian.
Gorn.
Well,
Oh, well, they're doing it
again,
with
the Saurian in
the Saurian.
Discovery.
That's a
Linus?
puppet.
Well,
Linus, I think, is a man in a suit.
it's a man in
And
a suit, but they do the CGI tweaks to the face
Right.
to give him the motion.
No, I realize that, but I'm just
yeah.
saying more like the Gorn. They actually, I forgot about that, but the Gorn in Strange New World, those are like little puppets that they're using.
Oh, are
like when
they?
they're
I just assumed they were
yeah.
CGI. I never crossed
No,
my mind that they
there's a lot of
like.
times where it's the same thing what you're talking about, where
Yeah,
they'll enhance the puppets with CGI, but they're puppets,
yeah,
so which is pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it works really well because I think when the actors have something to act off of, you could tell it's a whole different.
Yeah.
The meep felt real, like you could tell it was like cool.
So do you think, given that they've invested all this money into Meep designage and Roth Warrior designage, that those two aliens are going to show up again? Because they're now sitting in a closet somewhere, and it's cheap to pull them out anytime you want.
I don't know. I think we will see the meep again because I mean he's being imprisoned, so
Yeah.
but it may not be something we see until the 15th Doctor, well into the 15th Doctor's run. Just kind of like the
Yeah.
Slitheen, how
Yeah.
like they kind of popped in. I suspect we'll see both the Rarth warriors, who I really liked. We haven't talked about them yet, but
Yeah.
I definitely think we'll see the meep
Yeah.
come back.
No, I think the designs are pretty iconic, and they've built the costumes and they've built the CGI models. And it's not like they didn't show up in the comics and stuff. They didn't bring them back from time to time in the comics, but they did. So I would like to. I'd like to see more with the Wrath Warriors. I love their design, and I want to see the tongue reaching out and grabbing a cake.
Yeah,
piece of cake. I want to see the little alien xenomorph Invictus Raptus tongue thing come out and grab the cake.
Or it'd be cool if like now they have like a proboscis that's just like they're kind of like moth people. They're like crabby moth people. It's like very interesting that it's like cool.
Yeah.
But the Rarth Warriors were pretty cool. I liked how one thing that I didn't catch though is like there were like a ton of them fighting with Unit. What was the deal with that? Like, because I don't remember. Maybe I missed a part, but like, why were there only two at the end? Like, where did all the other warriors go?
Well, like they put down a bunch of warriors to find the Meep. And then
Right.
Unit is on the scene, and there's basically two units. There's the possessed psychedelic
Unit.
sun unit, and then there's the real.
So they're just distracted over there the whole time.
And basically, it turns into a giant clusterfuck with all these different factions with guns.
That's why the other. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. At the end, the other Roth soldiers did come back, so yeah, that's right. I remember.
Yeah.
Now. Okay.
Well, the Doctor manages to wave the sonic screwdriver and just commandeer two Wrath Warriors that happen to be using a teleporter at that moment.
That's right. That's right.
Which I thought, well, we're back to the Russell T Davies era. You wouldn't have gotten that with Moffat.
That's
he just waves his magic wand, and the characters he needs are right there in the scene. Like this is, yeah. There were some things about Russell T Davies I was kind of happy to see the end.
Hey, but you know what? It's bigger budget Russell T Davies.
Well, yes.
It's like
I wanted to talk about that on the good. We have this Disney money here, and maybe it's nowhere near. It may not be anywhere near as much money as Kenobi was spent on Kenobi, but it honestly looks better than Kenobi. I
It
think
looks great. Yeah,
Kenobi
the show
felt
looks amazing.
awkwardly like a fan film from time to time in a way I can't quite put my finger on, but this looked really sharp. It looked as sharp as anything from the Chibnall era, but so much more expansive and bigger. And I mean that ray gun fight, the unit versus we
Yeah, it
have
was
never
huge
had a gunfight that big in the
for that
entire
long. Yeah,
history
it
of
was really cool.
televised
Yeah.
Doctor Who. Nothing even close to that in the
It
entire
was pretty
history
impressive.
of
Yeah.
televised Doctor Who. I mean, obviously the novels and the comics, but a Big Finish, but they're not paying for it. They're just basically describing it and letting your imagination do all the work. So I guess that kind of puts down the people who write the comics. So yes, they are designing the shape of the battle and stuff when they do these comics. But yes, it was gorgeous. People were asking me what's your review of the episode, the spoiler free, and I said it's Russell T Davies with a proper budget. It feels exactly like Russell T Davies era, only with way more money to spend.
And Russell T Davies, his first era had like a specific look to it. They did like a lot of like saturation stuff, and like it was a very flat kind of image. And Moffat changed the look of Doctor Who to look more cinematic, if you will. It went from like a
Yeah.
TV look to a more cinematic look. This is like even a step above,
Yeah.
like
I mean, I think
it feels like
Chibnall,
more. Yeah.
whatever else you want to say about the Chibnall era looked better than Doctor Who had ever looked before. But this probably looks as good, if not better, than the Chibnall era did. So.
I actually think Doctor Who before now, I think Doctor Who, for me personally, it peaked uh in series 6, series 7, and then it looked the same to me. Like I thought the Chibnall stuff just looked like a softer focused version
No,
of what
I thought
was
they did a
before.
much better
Yeah.
job of making it feel like these were not just repurposed junk and from a junkyard that we rearranged to try to make it look like something. I was very impressed with the
Interesting.
production value that Chibnall managed to bring. But it was always they're doing it very, very carefully, and just basically if we can't make it look good, we're not going to show it, which has not always been the rule for Doctor Who creation. And I think Russell T Davies and Moffat were both a little, it doesn't have to look perfect, we'll still do it. And Chibnall was, no, it has to look good. If we can't make it look good, we're not going to do it. And now they can make it look good, and they can do the crazy stuff. They for the first time, and it looked really beautiful. I do think the rest of the episodes probably aren't going to look quite as good as this, because they probably spent extra money on this first one to draw in people and hook people in and get everyone excited about the show. So this is the one to spend the money on, and Star Beast is the sort of story you would want to spend that money on. It's a big, I mean, it's very small in some ways, but it's got aliens and gunfights and multiple species and spaceships ripping out of iron factories. And
Oh, I think the production quality is going to look the same. I just think we're going to get smaller scale.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to get as big shots like what you said, where it looks so like expansive and stuff. I think you'll start to see tighter shots and like stuff like that.
I don't think we're going to get one of those gunfights every week.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
That was probably
it did feel like
a big budget blow for the
it did feel like that hour was really kind of jam packed. I think it kind of felt like the same in a weird way, even though it wasn't the same amount of time passing. It did feel like this return of Russell T Davies felt like a lot like the kind of vibe I felt when the Eighth Doctor movie came out. Like it had just like I was like really excited about it, and I knew, and it delivered. It was like really big, like that Eighth Doctor movie was pretty big for its time.
Oh no! Until Chibnall came
like,
along, I thought the '96 TV movie was the best Doctor Who had ever looked.
Yeah.
And then Chibnall was like, "Okay, this looks really good." it's at least on par with that 96 movie. But yeah, we're raised the bar yet again. Sadly, we don't know how long this Disney deal will last, because now the new people in charge of Disney are chopping things right and left. So I don't know if the people in charge of Disney ever would have done this deal with the BBC. The people who are in charge now probably wouldn't have done the deal then, because the deal was done under the previous administration at Disney. So I'm a little worried about how long is this going to last, because is BBC
Well, I
is
think
Disney still happy with the deal that the previous leadership made?
I mean, I think that David Tennant still has that quality. I think he brought in a lot of new Doctor Who fans just because, like, his energy and the, like the Russell T Davies combination of David Tennant was like
Yeah.
a winner. And it seems like that's what they're doing here. It's like, and I think Russell T Davies is even calling this like series one, right? Like it's
Yeah.
the,
There
yeah.
are
So,
now 3 season 1s of Doctor Who.
yeah. So there you go. So,
One for each Tennant Doctor. So, that doesn't quite work out that way, but yes. So now when you say, what's your favorite season of Doctor Who, and they reply season 2, we're really not going to know what that means.
Not gonna know what that means. That's true. That's a good point. But it does very much feel like they're trying to appeal to new audiences. I wonder how it's faring in that regard. I haven't
I've
been at the
heard it
water
did pretty good
cooler.
on. I mean, like I seem to recall from reports that I saw from Lance Parkin posted on Facebook that that it did pretty well. It did really. I don't know how many new subscribers it brought, but a lot of the subscribers, certainly a lot of people who had access to Disney Plus, tuned in and
Watched
watched
it.
it.
Oh, that's
A
great.
lot, like easily on the same scale as their big Marvel prestige TV shows and stuff like that,
Oh,
on that
good. That's
level.
good to hear. Okay,
So,
good.
I mean, the real
So
question
maybe
is,
that
does it?
contract will get renewed.
Yeah, I would certainly. So far, I'm
Yeah.
very happy with how things are going. I'm not at all scared. I know Russell T Davies won't screw up Doctor Who, or at
Well,
least he
Doctor
won't
Who.
screw out any more than he already has. Let's put it that way. It's if there are a few choices he's made in the past, but I don't think he'll make any new wrong choices, in my personal opinions.
Doctor Who could, Doctor Who, I think is, uh, it'll always be around in some form or another, which is a good thing. Like that's something that like they've done really a great job where, like if there is another wilderness
Yeah. No,
to come.
the all the kids who grew up watching David Tennant and Matt Smith, they are going to be adults and in charge of what TV shows get made someday, and
That's
they are
true.
going
Good
to
point.
bring back Doctor Who if it isn't already there. They
There,
will
yeah, it's a good
absolutely
point.
bring it back. I have
Yeah.
no. We are good for another 25 years of Doctor Who in one form or another. It's not, you have to have several. You have to have basically a whole generation of really crappy Doctor Who that drives everyone away, and basically to kill it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Um. So, uh, let's see. I Chibnall. I characterize Chris Chibnall as a writer who was all set up and no payoff, and whereas I tend to characterize Russell T Davies as an actor who's all payoff and no setup. And that Moffat, since we're doing them, Moffat is the showrunner who is so obsessed with setup and payoff that he drops the ball on all the other issues. But but
Wow. Except for that first season, series
no,
5,
I'm
like,
not saying
yeah.
they all have good
Yeah.
episodes and stuff. I'm just saying that there are strong points
Series
and weak
5 is
points
my
of each
perfect
one.
season.
And I feel like after, I don't want to hate on the Jodie era, but after all 3 seasons and a bunch of specials of setup without proper payoff, I'm kind of relieved to be on the other end of the spectrum. It is nice to have payoff, and in this particular case, because it's building as a sequel to Journey's End, there pretty actually is quite a bit of setup. And
Setup,
I might
yeah.
be being too generous with it because I have all the continuity of the comic book to reinforce the setup for this episode. So I'm like, I can't actually view this episode as if as if I hadn't read Star Beast and didn't know everything about the Meep and the Meep culture and the Meep battle songs, and all of that is kind of feeding into this. So maybe there's more. The setup should be credited to Doctor Who magazine and not Russell T Davies, but I felt like this was really solid. They set all the stuff up, or it was set up in earlier episodes, and they paid it all off really well. So I was very happy with that.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think that, I think I stated this on this show. I don't know where I said this, but I just don't think I can't wait till Jodie Whittaker comes back and is written and it's kind of like written under Moffat or sorry, under Russell T Davies or Moffat or anyone else other than
I mean,
Chibnall, because
I
I
would.
really love her as an actor, and I don't think she was served by the series, by the the show
Yeah,
runner,
it
if
certainly
you will.
wasn't very
So,
consistent. There's some
yeah,
stories I loved, but
yeah,
there's a certain amount of inconsistency in her era as far as quality goes.
and
And
it,
I would
that just
love to
happens.
see
Yeah,
Big Finish. I would love to see Big Finish get a hold of Jodie Whittaker
yeah,
and see what they could do, and
yeah.
give us a bigger, wider, more wider spectrum Jodie Whittaker Doctor.
It's gonna be really fun when they do a multi-doctor story and she's part of the mix. I think
Yeah,
that's gonna be a wonderful, like, new dynamic that Doctor Who,
yeah.
hasn't had before, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, yeah, it would
Yeah.
be fun to see more of Jodie interacting with the other doctors,
Yeah.
just because a part of it is she's a woman, and it would be interesting to see, it's not just a bunch of white guys sitting around discussing how to save the universe. They're to get that different dynamic.
Right.
So I do hope we get some of that. It's already happened in the comics, but Titan Comics, where if you want your every story to be a multi-doctor story, read Titan Comics. Did you have any other big good things you wanted to mention about the episode?
No, I think we talked about how much fun this episode was. We talked about the budget. That was it looks beautiful. I mean, like, that TARDIS console, room
Oh
is
yes,
just nuts. I mean, like, we're gonna talk about it in a
yeah,
minute. Um, and then I think I talked about it earlier, but the inclusivity of trans people especially was really cool, and I think you marked that down as well. So,
yeah.
I think, Doctor Who would always do that. Like, I don't think Doctor Who would exclude anyone, but this was a great kind of moment of representation for trans people, which
And I think
I
it's
support. Yeah.
a moment that was well timed in the popular. Not to get too political about things, but
Yeah.
I feel like it was a moment we needed. So
I agree. Yeah, I think it just reminds the folks that are maybe getting it'll invigorate the folks that are fighting the good fight, and it'll remind folks that, like, Doctor Who kind of does a good job of, like, teaching. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
to me, I feel like all of these kinds of fears of the other, quote unquote, can be kind of lessened when you have really good storytelling like this, where you have that, like, where you can be introduced to a character that is someone you don't understand right away, but then you can start to understand them. And I think Rose is a great
yeah,
character like that. Yeah.
yeah. Also, for everyone out there, the Doctor is the other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's the other. There's
So
the other, and then
when
there's
you're
the other
afraid of
other.
the other, you're afraid of the Doctor. So
That's true. That's a good point. Hey, who needs to be afraid of the other anymore? That's
yeah,
true. Good
it's
point.
not like he ever shows up for this show. uh, okay, well, let's talk about what they did. What's bad? Um, I kind of.
Oh, wait, one more
Oh
thing.
yeah,
One
yes,
more thing for the good. Sorry, one more
yes.
thing. I Again, sorry to compare it to the previous era, but I was so happy that they brought back Murray Gold to compose the
Oh,
music.
I love the
I
other guy,
No,
Sagoon.
I
Oh, I
like
love the
that,
other
just like
guy.
that psychedelic sun wallpaper music was not for me. this is what I
Oh,
want for I want the big orchestra, but then they like I like that he incorporates the electronica kind of
yeah.
into it too. Yeah, and then also just those opening credits are so yummy. Like
They
this,
look beautiful, and I
they
certainly have
look
no
beautiful.
problem
Yeah.
with the new theme song, but I I I think this will be our one of our big points of contention here is that I think Doctor Who should sound like nothing else on television, and Murray Gold is wonderful and incredibly talented and sounds a whole lot like most of the other really good Hollywood movie soundtracks,
I
and
have to.
I want Doctor Who to sound different than that.
I
So
just want to defend Murray Gold and say that like I feel like he was at the forefront of bringing that kind of sound to television. Like Doctor, one of the things, the significant things about Doctor Who when it returned was how like big the score was
yeah,
compared to what else was on television at the
yeah.
time. And so I think like previous to that, I think the only other soundtrack I was excited about, like every series of Doctor Who up until up until the 13th Doctor, I have every soundtrack and I love it. I can't wait to get it. And the only time I felt like that recently was with Battlestar Galactica. Like I loved every, like
Yeah, but I
it
will
was
say
that kind of like
Battlestar Galactica does not sound like certainly like most other sci-fi shows. I
right, but
don't
now all the sci-fi shows sound like it, and I think
well,
that's
a
the
little
thing.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's the thing that's obviously, but like that's the thing is like Doctor Who when it was when that's crazy. Did you see like the thumb up or whatever that just happened? That was so
Yeah,
wild.
I wasn't sure
That's
quite
something
what
Siri does. I don't know what's going on. All
I
right,
guess
sorry.
the other there you go, the other finally made an appearance. He
That's what
stuck
it
his
was.
hand in just in case you thought he was like
I
Mr.
wonder if like it
Snuffleupagus
does
and
anything
doesn't
else.
exist.
Let's see if it does recognize anything else. Anyways, the point is that I feel like Murray Gold was doing stuff that wasn't wasn't like typical when in 2005 when Doctor Who came back.
I would
Now
say
I agree that it's like yeah, every show has a big soundtrack now. Like that's par
well,
for the
yeah, I think I mean, it is stuff that movies were doing though back then. It was about let's make give Doctor Who a cinematic soundtrack, and that's
right.
great. And he did a beautiful job. And there's some wonderful songs, but I have to admit, I can't remember how to say his name, but I like the weird, creepy uncanniness of his music for the Jodie Whittaker era. I
I'm not
like
trying
the
to
weird
convince you to
spaces.
yeah. I'm not trying to convince you to like Murray Gold, but I'm just telling you
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Murray Gold, I'm just telling
It's
you Murray
better, yeah.
Gold is better. No, I'm just kidding, Brian.
No,
Sorry.
no, no. I get it. I get it. And I'm not even saying Murray Gold's bad. There have been a lot worse composers on Doctor Who than Murray Gold. Believe me,
We will
he's
yeah.
really good. But
I
it's not like I
and
hate the fact that they brought him back. I like
and
the
I
other
was
guy a lot.
I was so excited about the other guy too because there was the potential that we were going to get like classic Who, Moogs and synth
Yeah, yeah,
instruments and weird kind
yeah,
of like abstract,
yeah,
musical forms and stuff like
yeah.
that. So but it didn't feel like that to me. It just felt like background music. But anyways, we got to
All right.
move on
Yeah,
because we're
yeah, yeah.
spending too
Sorry,
much
we
time
are
on
drifting. Okay, so
it.
I think to start out the bad,
Yeah.
the elephant that we inherited is I feel like, and many fans have pointed this out, that Donna saying, no, no, please don't wipe my memory, and the doctor forcing a memory wipe on her plays worse and worse every year. Am I right in that? Would that be your feelings
I
as
I've
well?
been I hear that argument, but I just think of it from an alien perspective and like in the moment, like the choice. I think people keep forgetting that the choice was that she die
Yeah, but she knew that.
or
He told her that, and she still said no.
yeah, I get it. But I guess I just want to say that like yeah, it is bad because he takes away her agency, of course. But it should have been addressed then. And I think there was an opportunity for Donna to say something, or maybe that's still coming.
Well, I
I
mean,
think it
we do get that. She is actually upset when she finds out her memory has been wiped.
that's
And she
true.
actually says, dude, there's a better way. I just stopped being
Right.
a Time Lord. Uh,
Right.
and and then again, Steve Moffat did a whole episode dealing with this issue without ever saying it was, when they came down to Clara and the 12th Doctor deciding, well, which one of us has to get our memory wiped, which one's going to do it. And they said, well, we'll flip a coin, and and it ends up being the Doctor who loses his memory. So that's all riffing on Journey's End, with where
Yeah.
Donna is forced to get her memory wiped.
Yeah, it's true.
um
But
so
I don't think that I don't think that like I don't think it was actually addressed. Like I think that like we got a quick moment of Donna reacting and kind of showing a little bit of anger, and then it went quickly to we have to like
yeah,
stop this like what is it called, a dagger drive. That's a
yeah,
cool name. The dagger drive from like destroying 9 million people. So I do hope they do talk about it. That would be fun. That would be not fun but like good actually to kind of
yeah,
like have like a moment, like between
yeah.
them.
I mean,
But as
if
far as as far as the weight of it, like, yeah, the more I hear the perspective that folks have given about it, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah. But at the time when I was watching it, it just felt like the right thing to do. Like, the
yeah,
Doctor had no choice. Like,
yeah,
I would not, I respect people's agency, but I'm not like willing to let someone die if I could save them. And
yeah.
that's
Well, I
something
mean, it's a
that's
tough
hard to,
choice.
yeah, it's a
And I
tough
think it
choice.
plays
Yeah.
very well into what we get from the Doctor. He runs off and becomes the Time Lord Victorious, which at some point we have to talk about that, because I just finished doing all the Time Lord Victorious multimedia story. And wow.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. But
Okay.
we don't have time to get into that today. Um, but uh, but yeah, so we kind of are growing out of this kind of slightly creepy ground to make this episode. But I feel like, we do say the Donna gets her memories back. She says there is a better way. She solves her and her daughter solve the problem themselves. So I feel like, we didn't make anything worse by coming back to this issue. We if anything, it's improved our overall
Yeah.
feelings about it.
Yeah.
Uh let's see, I talked about the missing dinner scene. Let's see. Um this this is based on a story from 1980, and it's a story where the Doctor helps the cops arrest the last member of a nearly extinct species who is suffering brain damage, and make sure that he is locked up for 10,000 years while his friend cures everyone else who has the same type of brain damage.
I
I,
think
you're going
I think what's not explained on screen though is that probably the Meep was beyond reversal.
I mean, they didn't say that.
No, I know, but I think that's the missing part here, because why would the Doctor not want to rehabilitate the poor Meep? I mean, could you imagine?
Because it didn't happen in the comic in 1980s.
Sometimes the Doctor's just vindictive. It's just like
I
we've
mean,
seen it before. So like, maybe the Doctor was just like, nah, you gave me too much grief, Meep. It's
I got
like
to the end and I'm like, oh, well, thank goodness for Doctor Who and the police. Wow. Yes. Like, I see why it says police box, because he teams up with the police and stops the last surviving member of the Meep kind, who's
by the
did not
unit.
decide to be a sociopath, was blasted by psychedelic sun radiation that turned him into a sociopath, and locks him up for 10,000 years, as opposed to saying maybe we should find a way to cure him.
I think the Meep is beyond help.
Uh,
I
it's
personally think
and if
the
they
Doctor
didn't
did the right
have
thing.
other people being cured in the episode, it wouldn't quite be so bad. But
After
Rose
2000
literally cures some people.
after 2000 after 2000 years after 2,000 years, the Doctor knows better. Uh, his experience has taught him that
That
the Meep is,
sometimes that sometimes you got to work with the cops.
and that the Meep is irredeemable.
I
Well, or when Rose used the field or whatever to reverse the psychedelic sun, maybe the field was big enough and it didn't affect the Meep because the Meep is far gone. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean,
Like,
again, I feel like a couple
yeah.
lines of dialogue would have at least helped. We're still going to end with the doctor, catches criminals for the cops, but um, who are the last of their species. What I would have done is thrown in a line where they're like going to execute the Meep, and the doctor says, "No, I've done the math. It will take 10,000 years for the radiation to the half-life for the radiation that he's been infected with is 10,000 years or whatever number. And
That's
so if you just
genius.
keep him locked up for 10,000 years, he will become a nice person again." And, that's still a little problematic, but at least it's not quite 1980 problematic.
I do like that. That's a good idea.
So, and again, I don't think this was really Russell T Davies' fault per se. He's literally adapting a story from 1980, and this sort of baggage is going to come from just about any adventure story from that far back is going to have some stuff that doesn't. At the time, it was incredibly forward thinking, Black Doctor Who companion, but now it looks a little dated, and so. Anyway, just that was, I don't know, what did you not like about the story?
I didn't like that um it was kind of, I feel like it felt rushed. Like I think it could have been a 90-minute.
Hmm.
Like, like the other specials, right? Aren't they a little longer? The
Nah, not really. That's
Maybe
about the
not.
same length.
They just
The
felt more.
longest
I guess
whatever was that Russell did was the Titanic one was 65 minutes, but
Oh, really?
ever,
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's like 8 minutes longer than this. So
I guess I just wanted a little bit more time with the Doctor. That's all. That's the only
yeah,
bad thing I could think of. Um, I can't think of anything really bad except for, again, just like little tiny, like we've kind of gone over our little nitpicks here and there. Just like, having
yeah,
Donna and the Doctor have more of a moment addressing the meta crisis solution,
yeah,
thing. And it would have been, I feel like Rose, again, that was my other, I think I already, those were the things that, like, and they're like gray area bad. It's just, more time with Rose, like more about Rose would have been neat.
yeah,
um yeah, that's about it, just little things like that. Oh,
yeah,
I mean, otherwise it was just like, it was kind of like note perfect in a
yeah.
way, almost, it's just like,
Sadly,
and it
it's too short and doesn't spend enough time with the characters. Complaint is what I mean when I say Russell T Davies is all payoff, and no setup.
right,
It's
right.
exactly his problem, and I don't think I've kind of just said, okay, that's what it's
But
going to be
like you
like.
said, it doesn't, yeah, but like you said, it doesn't feel as bad here because we do have so much setup from previous seasons with Donna and the Doctor. I mean,
Yeah,
he kind of did a shortcut, you know,
yeah,
in a way, by not going straight into the 15th Doctor.
yeah.
You know,
I,
like he
I
kind
I
of
do think this was I don't mind it, but an incredibly odd choice for your first Disney Doctor Who is a story that's a direct sequel to a story episode that isn't even on Disney Plus right now.
Oh, that is the weird thing. You have to go
Did
to
you?
HBO
Yeah,
Max, I
yeah, yeah. They
think, to
basically
get
need to have
right.
a
Yeah.
little blurb. If you want to know what the story's all about, go subscribe to HBO.
Yeah. Oh, that was another thing. I get why it was there, but it was kind of, if I watch it again, I wish I could skip the little green screen, backstory,
Oh,
you know, thing.
yeah.
But I think that I get, like,
You need a
why
skip
they did.
recap button.
Yeah, I need it, but like I didn't even like the way it was. I wish they'd just done a recap. Like it was weird how they did this. Like the doctor standing with a nebula behind him or whatever,
They
like,
needed to do it like the opening of DS9, where there's this slow crawl of text in the
yeah,
first
that would have
episode
been
of
fine. Or
DS9 on Stardate, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a couple of clips from it that goes into the new story.
yeah, or just show the clip, or just show the yeah. Sorry, just show the flashbacks to the previous, like all the
Yeah.
little flashbacks, but with narration. I didn't need to see, like, I don't know, it was weird. And then, like, it was weird because they flashed to a line that I feel like Donna says again in the episode. So David Tennant's the 10th Doctor's lines were kind of original because he was standing against that nebula, but it felt like they just like cut in another narration from Donna that was already in the show, in the
No,
episode
well, I think
later.
everything she's saying is she's at the laptop is new. They do put some
But
clips of her from before, but like the binary
are you
thing.
yeah, but like the scene with the laptop, I feel like what she says in that scene is the same thing she says to Sylvia later. I feel like they
Well,
just
yeah.
right? Like, isn't it
It might have
pretty
been.
much
It could be the BB
okay.
that they made the episode, showed it to Disney, and Disney said, "Oh, we I don't know what's going on here. Make me an introduction." So they threw something
That's
together.
what happened,
I
yeah.
was just saying. I just meant it wasn't stuff from back in back in 2010, but
Right,
or
right.
nine. But
That was
uh,
interesting to see the difference, though. You could really see the difference in, like, because Russell T Davies stuff, I think, was in standard definition. I don't think it became HD till the 11th Doctor, or no, the
uh,
specials.
the
The fourth,
specials, yes,
the
right,
10th Doctor specials
yeah,
were HD. Yeah, that's right.
yeah. I think the
So it
next
is
Doctor was not, and then everything after the next Doctor was. So
was okay. Yeah, so it was interesting to see how they, because like you could see the difference in quality when they were flashing back to the stuff.
I've
So
heard several other people on the internet say the same thing, and I rewatched looking, and I'm like, oh god, my eyes are shit. I can't tell the difference at all.
goodness.
I'm so old. I need to regenerate my eyes.
Yeah, you might need to do that. That's funny.
His body's wearing a bit thin.
So yeah, those are my only bad
Yeah.
things.
All right. Well, did you have any wibbly wobbly comments, observations, complaints?
Uh, there's so much. Like I didn't really watch it enough times to unpack. I didn't take notes, so I didn't unpack all the things, but there were so many nice little references and little moments here and there in the dialogue that referenced other things that I feel like there's lots of, also there's just like now that Russell's back on the scene, I'm sure there's clues to some big,
Yeah.
under thing that's going on. Like, I'm sure there's posters that I've missed that, like, how like Bad Wolf was there from the beginning, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, I'm sure there's stuff that we're gonna find. He's gonna have like some kind of stuff, that at the end of the season we're gonna be like, oh my god,
I know
it
a
was
lot of
there.
people are talking about the Cyberdog arcade pub thing or whatever it is,
Oh yeah, that
but
was
that
interesting.
is an
Yeah.
actual place that has actually been there for decades. So I
Okay,
mean,
gotcha.
so it's probably just, hey, this would be fun to film this outside Cyberdog, so that's what we're going to film it outside.
That's funny. That's funny.
Now maybe it'll turn out that they're going to film more at Cyberdog and it will be a reference, but it
What
wasn't a
about
set.
you?
For me, the big obvious one is the same one we've dealt with before. How did this story happen to the Doctor twice and he doesn't comment on it? He honestly seems to believe the Meep is a good person until he finds out that the cops are setting for stun, because cops always set for stun. And yeah, it's like, how does that work? And again, as you pointed out the slide, this is not the first time we have dealt with this. The events of human nature appear to have happened to the Doctor twice, and in both cases they are so similar that it's really weird. Like, I guess all the characters in the new version of I think the Doctor is the only, well, maybe the Wrath Warriors. The Wrath Warriors and the Meep and the Doctor are all the same. I think all have the same names. And
Yeah.
none of them are talking about how they did all this back in 1980.
So how
Or
does that happen?
1979. And there's no authentic, definitive answer. The casual, lazy person's answer is the comics don't count, or the novels, in this
Don't
case,
count, right?
count.
But that's not
Um,
true for Doctor Who, right? Isn't it?
well, the BBC never said that. That's just what fans are
Right.
saying. And
Okay.
the thing is how do you say they didn't count when they're clearly, very clearly having a massive influence on the TV show? Like, if this story is, you can't just say this doesn't matter. It mattered enough that it got itself a comic book and a radio drama or an audio drama and a novelization and a TV episode. So to say it doesn't count is really ridiculous. I suppose you could argue that maybe the expanded universe stuff is stories that happen to the Doctor, but not necessarily in the manner that were depicted. I, of course, am an inclusivist when it comes to continuity. I like everything to count. So for me, this is a big, theological conundrum. It's like, well, we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. How can these all be the same story when they have different details? How do I, this is my religion. How do I reconcile the fact that these are 4 different versions of the same story? Only one of them can be the actual definitive version, right? And my favorite solution for this is some incredible lore deep dive here. So brace yourself. We're going down. Ding, ding. Dive. They back in the 90s in the novels, I am the Time Lord, or the Gallifreyan. I am Foreman, who we talked about before on Unearthly Child, and I had the T-shirt, which I almost wore. She, I think it was at the time, created a bottle universe based on the primary universe, and there was a 7th Doctor running around in there having adventures, some of which were explicitly referencing the adventures of the Virgin New Adventure line, which was published in the early 90s. I think actually this was the aughts when this book came out. Maybe no, it was late 90s. Anyway, she made this bottle universe. The Time Lords, knowing that this time war was coming and that they were going to have to find a good place to hide from their enemy, they might lose it. They wanted to have some bolt holes. They stole the bottle from her, and they stuck a colony of Gallifreyans inside the bottle so that even if Gallifrey and everything got all blowed up, there would still be some Time Lords out there. The society, the culture would survive in this bottle universe of this that Foreman had made, though Foreman didn't really make it for them. Anyway, they stole the bottle, but then they decided the best place to hide the bottle was the vortex. And it turns out if you put a bottle universe in the vortex unshielded, it unfolds in the 5-dimensional universe, and all the continuity of that bottle universe spills out into the normal universe and creates this new hybrid continuity. So anytime I run into situations like this, where we've got these stories that happen to the Doctor twice, there's also some Doctor Who annual stories that came out in the 70s that were originally done with John Pertwee, and then they painted John Pertwee out and painted Tom Baker in and republished them. So it's the same text. It just has Tom Baker's face painted over John Pertwee's face in the pictures. So, there's a case of the same story happening to the Doctor and Sarah, but it was 2 different incarnations.
That's funny.
And word for word the same, I think. So, is that one of these versions is that basically we have these 3 different timelines. We have this bottle universe timeline made by Foreman that had a Doctor going on adventures, and maybe it sounds like the whole novel line of the Virgin New Adventure novels might have actually been in that bottle. Then we have the original timeline, and then we have this hybrid timeline of what happens when you mixed all that together. And I tend to think that these little shifts are side effects of all of that. And there's a simpler version of this theory, which is called Time War did it. Anytime anyone has a continuity problem, they just say, oh, well, that's because of the Time War. And it is. This theory actually is the Time Lords, stole the bottle and threw it into the vortex because they were trying to protect themselves from the Time War, and it all unfolded in the vortex and contaminated everything. So it literally is a more complicated, precise version of the Time War did it explanation. This is purely fan theory. I don't really have, I mean, the idea that these two continuities merge to create some new third continuity, that's as canon as anything is in Doctor Who. But the idea that this particular comic might have existed in the original timeline and then it turned into what we just watched this weekend once the timelines merged is a fan theory that's a cause. But that's how I reconcile these things in my head.
That's a really good deep dive. I like it.
Yeah. So that's your little time lore discussion for this episode.
Very nice. Very nice.
Shall we talk about this new TARDIS as a feature of the week?
Yes.
What'd you think?
My instructions tell me to throw up the leopard TARDIS, so
yes,
I did.
Yes. No, this is the leopard print TARDIS. So yes, the TARDIS has desktop themes, and you can flip through the themes and get different desktops depending on which theme you select, and you can design your own themes for the TARDIS desktop. And this episode brought us a new desktop theme, but I also found this fan made, and I'm afraid I don't know who originally made this. I got this picture back in like 2006 or something, whenever they first announced the leopard print. Then somebody threw that together, but which was in Time Crash. But here we go, the new TARDIS. And so yeah, we've got these themes, and you can flip through them if you've got the TARDIS, and decide which theme you want to run and design your own custom themes. And it looks like the TARDIS also designs themes. I get the idea that the Matt Smith console room is very much a desktop theme that the TARDIS itself designed. Mm-hmm. So I have trouble believing that the Doctor he clearly didn't know what he was going to find. So it wasn't designed by the Doctor, but it also is really hard to imagine Time Lords designing that as a stock set model, right? These crusty old Time Lords saying, I think it should have these swooping walls that go nowhere, and
definitely not.
All of that stuff in the original Matt Smith console design. So I think we can safely say that was designed by the TARDIS herself. And today, or this weekend, we got a new TARDIS design, which you can see here. This is probably the biggest TARDIS control room we've seen thus far.
In fact, I got to throw you back up to show the real kind of scope of it, because
yeah. Here, I'll just stand up for a moment.
But yeah, you can kind of see, and then actually I could probably
size of that thing.
Yeah, look at the size of that thing. Actually, if I remove, hold on, let me see. If I remove, all right, I'm gonna do this. So you can kind of see, and it changes colors. It's a wild TARDIS. It's cool. I like it. Yeah, but it's also very simple. It's very Apple Store.
Yeah, but it also goes back to the original white design that the Hartnell era was so fond of. Though I guess now we've learned in the colorized Dalek that the floor is actually a pretty strong sky blue in the new colorized Daleks. But
that's right.
But yes. So yeah, it's probably the biggest control room. I mean, I don't have the exact dimensions to hand, but it looks bigger than any of the other ones we've seen.
The biggest one we've seen, at least the one that felt the biggest before, was either the Eighth Doctor's felt huge because of that green screen dome. Mm-hmm. That the like it felt like it was huge because you had that universe thing above it, or whatever. the Eighth Doctor's TARDIS is still, I think, one of the coolest TARDIS control rooms we've seen, with the library and the old furniture and the kind of the steampunk, aesthetic. Was really really cool. The
Yeah.
11th Doctor is my personal favorite,
The
and I
first
think I would
11th
still
or the second
the
11th?
first 11th Doctor,
Okay.
the first one, the wacky TARDIS designed
Yeah.
one, because I just really love all the copper tones, and like just how it was like warm but also big. It was like
Yeah.
huge but warm. This
Whimsical.
one, whimsical,
You know,
yeah.
that's
This
the
one's
word I
my
always
third favorite TARDIS. This is I fell in love with it instantly, especially when the lights change color on the roundels.
uh,
That's what sold it to me, because it just felt I don't know, it feels like the TARDIS is gonna speak to us. I don't know. There was something about this TARDIS console that just like excited me from the start, from the moment I saw it.
I mean,
Could be
it is
David Tennant's excitement, but
yeah, it is very pretty.
yeah.
It both is has a complexity that you would expect from 21st century sci-fi, right? You expect to have a certain amount of complexity in modern sci-fi, not in comparison to say 60s Star Trek, right?
Right.
60s Star Trek has a very kind of simple design aesthetic that looks kind of bad or very old-fashioned-y when you do it in sci-fi today. So it has that complexity, but because they make it so big, it also has the simplicity of the old TARDIS console rooms. Like, look at the tiles in the background. They're really, really big squares with a white circle
Mhm.
in the middle, and there's not much
Yeah.
more to them than that. So
Yeah,
on one
exactly.
level, the complexity comes from how big it is, and these walkways are very simple too. But again, it's so big that they can have lots of walkways and lots of roundels, and so the complexity builds up over the space. So I think it's a
Yeah.
nice balance between those simpler classic Who console room designs, but also keeping the complexity that you need to sell these things to a modern audience.
I
And
don't
I
know
think that
that one room, the wooden console room.
oh, what the Tom Baker season 14 console room?
Yeah, that was pretty complex,
Yeah, no,
woody.
that one was different. Oh, I think
Yeah.
that if it wasn't for the console being a little underwhelming, I think you could absolutely sell that control room from to today. I
Yeah.
think that the wooden
Yeah, I think
console
so
room
too.
was in fact intricate enough that, and because it was kind of deliberately going retro,
Right.
deliberately going old fashioned, that it owned it in a way that like all the console rooms up until that point had not.
Not
All the
right.
console rooms up until that point hadn't meant to look state of the art, but tend to look very quaintly retro when we look at them
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's true.
But the Tom Baker one was deliberately retro and thus more timeless. But that season 14 wooden paneled one. But yes, it's gorgeous. It's both simple and complex. It's just huge. Like I didn't really realize just how big it was till I saw a making of photo that was taken showing the entire set
Yeah.
from like the outside, so you could see the outer walls of it curving around in the studio. And then I was like, good grief, that thing's huge to some degree, because you have to bring the camera in close enough that you don't see the edges of the set. It hides just how big it tends to hide just how big this place is to some
Mhm.
degree. Um, we're also back to the Russell T Davies standard of the TARDIS set does not have a 360-degree set. Part of what the fourth wall is missing,
Right.
which
Right.
was with the way the old David Tennant, Christopher Eccleston TARDIS console was. Whereas Moffat, the whimsical TARDIS, which I call brass and glass, that you love so much, it that one was missing a wall originally, but then I think in the second season they built a wall for it for that missing side. So it was a 360 set, and then the one we associate with Capaldi, but actually showed
It's
up,
definitely a
it
3, right?
is 360, and Jodie Whittaker's was a 360, albeit 360 in just darkness in the background with standing set pieces. So you don't really see the outer walls per se.
Right.
I think it's just a black curtain or something back there probably, um but so yeah, and I like the idea that it's a 360 set, that if you walked into it, you would feel like you were completely in the TARDIS, whereas you can never do that with this set. You will always be
Right.
able to, you look over there, there's this giant hole.
Right. Right.
um, but it's not like I'm going to get to walk around on this set. So who am I to complain?
You
And
never
it,
know. You
yeah,
never know.
and we never see that. I do like that Russell is making up for the fact that there was no way out of the original console room. The 2005 console room had only the doors out to the real normal space, the real world interface that leads to normal space, the police box doors, and that was it. And you never knew where the bathroom and the wardrobe, how do they get to those? And you kind of had to assume that it was in the side that you can't see. There must be a door there. But when they needed that side for particular camera shots, they would just rotate everyone around and shoot the other
That's
walls. So
right.
you would see, if you try to look for that, you will never, even in scenes where you're theoretically seeing that far wall, you're not actually seeing any doors. So eventually I had to conclude that there was like a hatch in the floor with no railing around it and a ladder or a steep staircase. And that if you weren't careful, you would just accidentally fall down it. And that it was like recessed behind one of the raised platforms. So that you walked over there and then climbed down a ladder or something to get to the rest of the TARDIS.
That's pretty funny.
Russell T Davies is making up for it here. Doors everywhere.
There are doors everywhere.
I'm not sure if those iris doors, those multi-segmented doors, I actually open, or if they're going to be opened using special effects. I kind of think that we're going to see they're opened with sci-fi with CGI, because looking at them, they kind of look like they're one big round molded piece of plastic, and rigging up all the motors to get those little triangles to all slide back at the same time is that's a lot of money. Might be cheaper to just do it with CGI opening, and which means I think you'll almost never see anyone coming out of those doors, and everyone's going to be going out of the doors, the corridor exits that don't have doors.
Right.
Because it costs money to have somebody walk through this door, and it's cheap to have them walk through that door, and we'd rather use the monster on this week's the money on this week's Cyberman, so or whatever, right? So I do wonder if they shot themselves in the foot by just putting doors up there. Though it might be a construction thing. Like maybe those doors are going to disappear in a few episodes and actually have corridors behind them. They just hadn't gotten a chance to build that yet. So they threw up some doors to plug the hole in the set.
Yeah, I'm sure they're modular too. Like, uh, the doing it the CGI way would make sense, because all you'd have to do is shoot it closed, take the module out, and
Yeah.
then there's and then you have your animation piece.
Yeah, and then you stick the animation in. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the console?
Other than the odd choice of having a gigantic coffee machine, I loved it. I see that the blue Boringers are there, right there. I see them. Yeah, so that makes me happy. It reminds me of again, it's just it feels good. It feels familiar, and it feels new at the same time, which is kind of how this whole thing feels, this whole special. It felt like familiar but new at the same time.
Yeah. Now, if in the when they did the first Matt Smith console room, the guy who designed that actually wrote up a bunch of notes about what each panel did, and one of the panels was the fabrication panel, and it had a kind of bin underneath it that, in theory, things could be fabricated and would drop down into the bin. They never really used that in the script much. I think the the sonic screwdriver popped out on that panel, but so it fabricated the screwdriver, I think. But the idea stuck, and it's in the reference books and the magazines and stuff. The layout that he wrote up, and then I think they put a fabrication panel on the back to basics kind of metal console that Matt Smith used in his last season that then is more associated with Capaldi. I think there was a designated fabrication panel there too. So my assumption is that big cylinder is not just a coffee maker. It's it's the TARDIS fabrication panel. And it was just set to fabricate coffee. And so once the doctor saw, oh, it's already set for coffee. Okay, I'll just, brew one up. And that's my guess. But yes, the TARDIS, they actually use the TARDIS 3D printer in this episode, as opposed to having a 3D printer in the TARDIS and I don't think ever using it during the previous Doctors.
Well, it sounds like it's now a full replicator if you're making things like coffee and beverages.
Yeah. I mean, but Whitaker's TARDIS could make biscuits, cookies.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But it wasn't clear if it could do other things or just biscuits. I think with this big, huge unit that's taking up a whole panel, I feel like this is distinctly the fabrication panel, and we're going to see that.
I agree.
Brewing up other things, like, not just coffee, other stuff like tea.
Taco Tuesday. Tacos on Tuesday. Yeah, you can have
with a TARDIS every day can be Taco Tuesday. So,
it's true.
I like it. So yeah, I at first I was a little like, there was another shot I had of it farther out. Could you showing the console? Could you bring that one up? There you go. Thanks. I was actually like, why is there all this exposed piping? Why do the panels not cover it? And the sad answer to that is Donna needs to be able to pour coffee down it.
Which the TARDIS would have known, so it actually set itself up for that.
That is an argument that is hard to. There's no arguing that point. You are absolutely right. The TARDIS would have known that Donna was going to pour the coffee in there. It put the coffee maker. It put the fabricator there. It put the fabricator on coffee mode, so the Doctor didn't even have to call anything up. And it made a console that was deliberately easy to pour coffee into, unlike, say, the Capaldi console, the previous the Capaldi console. Or the Jodie Whittaker one, which seems like a solid hunk of crystal. What are you going to say?
Not just that it was easy to pour the coffee into, but that it would create such a strong reaction. The flames from that coffee spill are just insane. It's those are also probably the biggest flames I've ever seen in the TARDIS.
I'm trying to figure out how much of that is, they've started putting actual flame generators on sets. I think
that's why there's a grill. I have a feeling that's why it's like that.
Yeah, so that they have the slots for the flame. And I'm like, how much of that was real flame and how much of that was CGI flame? I'm not sure. I think some of it was real flame. I do. It
looked pretty good. I don't remember. I both times I looked at it, I was like, "Dang, that looks like real fire," and they were reacting as though it was real fire. Yeah. Like almost like, "Whoa, this is bigger than we thought it would be."
Yeah. Is that the propane line there under the console that's coming down?
I wonder. But I was wondering, what is that? Is that like, because there's the center stem, but then there's that little side stem there.
I don't know what that side stem is. It looks, I mean, it feels like it has me thinking, oh, that's like in the old classic Who, where if you look carefully, there's always a cable coming out of the console and going under the wall that provides all the light, or the lights, because it was just a concrete floor of the studio set. They didn't put down and mount a cable underneath it. So
that's pretty funny.
In classic Who, and I'm like, is that like the same thing? But surely they just would have run the wire through the stem. It's clear that they have complete control over whatever's going on under this console. It's not just sitting on a hunk of a concrete studio floor.
Right.
It's got a whole switch room under there. But yeah, so I'm not sure if I like the gaps. I guess I'll have to see how it grows on me. The rest of it's fine. I like all the rest. I like the funny little nozzles sticking out around the time column, and the little rotating screen, and everything else, and even the individual controls all look pretty cool and nicely functional, but also just diverse enough to kind of have that weird Doctor Who-ness to it that console rooms in the new Who era have, where it doesn't look like it was all designed by one person. So yeah, I think it's a good balance. I don't know why those gaps are there. So were there original? Is this a modified version of another console that was stored? Was this like a template, and then the TARDIS decided it wanted to put different hardware in these slots, and so it just cut out, in the CGI model for the thing before they 3D printed it, cut out these holes in it so that they could mount these other components that didn't fit properly? And is that what's going on? I don't know. I like the little hexagonal keypads. I kind of with the blue. I think they're hexagons, aren't they? Yeah, they got to be hexagons.
Well, the whole thing's a hexagon, but those are, yeah, they are hexagons.
Yeah, I think there's a close up in the other picture.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, you can see one by the monitor there. Those.
Yeah, there are, and there's even little hexagons in there too.
Yeah, on the monitor keyboard. So yeah, that's kind of cute. But yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. It's nice and big. Several people are saying that Shuti should customize it by scattering ancient furniture all over the place. On one hand, that creates a very cool retro look, like the old Hartnell console was all white and gleaming with all this old furniture. The downside is when you have the whole TARDIS shake, you then have to find some way to throw all the furniture around. And not only is that mechanically difficult, like how do you can't just shake the camera and have the actors bounce. You need that coffee table to slide across the floor and stuff.
Well, I mean, the 11-12 had a library and a chalkboard and like all kinds of things going on.
I do think all that much shaking with him though.
Yeah, it's true. Hardly ever shook. But I do wonder why they don't have at least the, like 10's TARDIS, 9 and 10's TARDIS had like the little seats.
Yeah,
where you could just sit. There's no seating. There's no seating on this new TARDIS at all. There's like not even benches or anything like that, which is interesting. TARDIS.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, from a drama point of view, actors standing up and walking around as they act is always way more interesting than actors sitting in chairs. Always.
Yeah.
Kirk is constantly leaping out of his captain's chair and walking around the bridge as he does his thing. Spock maybe delivers most of his lines standing up, not sitting at his science station, and so forth with most Star Trek. But realistically, humans like to sit down at their jobs. and this humans' legs get tired. I mean, even if you want to say Time Lords don't. And so realistically, there should be at least a chair for Donna that they should go fetch. But even if you want to say that the doctor's built differently and he doesn't get tired, but in practice, we see the doctor sitting down lots of times. So it kind of feels like a couple of chairs would make sense.
Right.
Did you think we should talk about the desktop theme, or
you mean the environmental metaphor?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I think we should end with that. We should end with it. Yeah,
it's been a while, so we'll give you an extra long episode to make up for our accidental space-time navigation blip. I swear it was just a week for us. I didn't even realize it had happened until the cop pulled me over because my license plate tags were expired. So, all right. So a TARDIS feature of the week here. TARDIS Desktop theme, also known as the environmental metaphor. The TARDIS interior micro-universe is created using transcendental equations that do not interface with normal space in a traditional way, like the way this glass does or something. This glass is looking pretty four-dimensional now anyway. There we go. There's the normal-looking glass. It's the default state of a TARDIS includes a psychosculpture environmental metaphor. That is what you see, like behind me and in the pictures. This three-dimensional form of the pedestrian infrastructure is created using the hynoleptic interface and driven by a device that works very similarly to the chameleon circuit. So they describe it as a metaphor, which makes you wonder if is the TARDIS walls real, or are they just like something going on in your head, the same way the TARDIS translation happens. The imaginary enhancer systems fine-tune this process, and the Heisenberg circuits control the shape and form and structure of the console itself. So yeah, it's like being in a CGI environment. It's all moddable and changeable and reprogrammable. But it, of course, uses something much more complicated than just holograms and force fields like they do on Star Trek. It's a psychosculpture and a metaphor, which I'm like, okay, I'm not quite sure what that means. We know this technology has existed since at least the Type 26 TARDIS, because they had modular desktop themes. But we know that we need this because without the psychosculpture illusion of the environmental metaphor, the interior of the TARDIS would be seen as a multidimensional bio-entity. And thanks to their time brain, Time Lords are able to function in this environment without significant problems. But the multidimensional psychic nature of the interior will drive lesser species like humans mad with visions of sinuous churning monstrosities. So it's the inside of the TARDIS is something that's very Cthulhu-esque. And there's a reason for that. It's because they're all grown from Cthulhu seeds. Not literally, but if you,
but something
the
like
mythology
that,
of where the TARDIS seeds come from is basically the Lovecraftian and Cthulhu mythos.
Gotcha.
It is the same mythology.
Gotcha.
We will get to how they grow TARDISes hopefully in another episode, but the fact that it looks like Cthulhu on the inside should not be all that surprising. And depending on what sort of 4 or 5 dimensional senses you have, the TARDIS will actually look a bit Cthulhu-esque on the outside with tentacles and fins waving in the air and a big blobby body that is totally obscured by the exochronoplasmic shell with the chameleon circuit if you just have normal human eyes.
That's fascinating.
So yes, you will go mad if this hypnolytic interface and imaginary enhancer systems are not working properly in the TARDIS if you walk in.
That's pretty cool.
Non-sentient beings will be only mildly nauseous when viewing the interior with your metaphor. So your cat definitely vomiting on the floor if this thing isn't tuned in. The interior has about as much possibility for variation as a TARDIS exterior does. The wallpaper controls are used to alter the environmental metaphor's desktop theme. The color for the default color for TARDIS is off-white. Since 6 is a very important number in Gallifreyan culture, the hexagonal form is very common. Is a very common structural shape in Gallifreyan architecture. Hexagons can be found in the shapes of many consoles. Control rooms are often hexagonal shaped, the whole room, and they often will decorate the walls. And in many TARDISes, there are show up the leopard print here. So. If you look on the one side there, you can see the roundels are arranged in a form like a hexagonal bee honeycomb, as if they're interlocking. That's the sort of pattern you get when you put hexagons together. The hexagons themselves are basically not being shown, and the roundels are being stuck in each hexagon. But that's a hexagonal pattern, even if it doesn't read as hexagonal. And as you can see, the console itself is very hexagonal, both in the panels and the main stations, and on the plinth, the stem that holds the console up has little hexagons on it. So leopard print is not particularly Time Lordish, but go watch Deadly Assassin. There's a bunch of animal furs for rugs and chairs made out of animal fur, covered in animal fur on Gallifrey. So apparently leopard print is not quite as weird as we might think. The Time Lords have gone through phases in their culture where fur is absolutely the in thing to decorate your room with. So leopard print might seem insane, but if you really look back in the 70s Doctor Who, it's not quite as crazy as it sounds. Or at least it's no crazier than it was in the 70s on Earth. Let's see. The individual rooms and perhaps the entire interior can be remodeled by changing the desktop theme. Different themes include the default white, the coral theme, the leopard skin theme, the wood paneled theme, and the gothic theme. So they seem to kind of be named like the old screensavers or the old desktop themes that your computer would come with. And those are all built-in themes that that a Type 40 TARDIS would come with. There's some more. I've actually got a list of them someplace, but I didn't manage to get time to dig that out yet. And you could design your own themes just like you could with with Windows or Mac.
Right.
Depending on the complexity of the upgrades, it can take anywhere from less than a day to several months for the TARDIS to redecorate its console room. During this time, the TARDIS will place a sign on the door or decorate a room. During that time, the TARDIS will place a sign on the door that says that the room is closed for refurbishment. The TARDIS key will glow to indicate that console room redecorations are complete. Normally, all storage rooms and corridors follow the console room's theme, but system faults can result in some areas retaining older, disused themes. So even if you're running Coral in the primary console room, you might walk down a corridor and find all the roundels from the Fifth Doctor era.
Gotcha.
If there's a fault. In theory, it's all supposed to be changed everywhere. Some renegade time ships have been known to secretly archive their old control room and sometimes archive the new themes that haven't even been invented yet. And since it is designed to function as something of a safe mode, the secondary control room desktop theme has much more limited defaults. The primary control room you can really go nuts with, but just like how you can start your computer in safe mode and it disables a whole lot of the fancy bits and bobs on it in order to simplify the boot up process, so too the secondary control room acts as something of a safe mode for the TARDIS, so that if you ever get too carried away with your architecture, or there's some sort of fault in the desktop theme system, if you can find the secondary control room, it will be white and square and simple. And the secondary control room number 2, is what we see in most of Classic Who. That is, and I wondered if it's maybe because the Doctor's TARDIS is so old and falling apart. Is that why he spent quite a few centuries preferring the secondary control room to the more fashionable primary one that has more design options? But that's just a guess. I'm not entirely sure why they were in the secondary control room most of the classic run. But you can see a good example of the difference between the default standard mode of the primary control room and secondary control room if you look at the Fugitive Doctor's TARDIS and Fugitive of the Jadoon, and compare it to the William Hartnell TARDIS console room in, say, Unearthly Child. So, let's see. A TARDIS can automatic. Huh?
I was just saying excellent.
Yes, yes. Do you have any questions so far or comments?
No, I love this kind of stuff, and I believe you have a TARDIS manual that people can go look at, right?
Yes, yes. In fact, most of this has come right out of the TARDIS manual. And let's see. Did I have anything? Yeah, we can skip that stuff. I think that's more peripheral to the whole desktop theme program. So yeah, I think it's about time to wrap this up. So yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff. It's as versatile as this backdrop here on this StreamYard video, where you can just stick anything you want back there, and you can go off with a computer and design your own CGI backdrop and stick it there.
Well, in fact, with these like the metaverse and all that stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't already TARDIS control room consoles being built in those virtual worlds now. I wonder if Minecraft, I'm sure someone's done it in Minecraft.
Oh
and all
yeah.
these other
What's the world, the old standby for a virtual socializing environment?
Are you thinking of Second Life?
Second Life, I think. There are loads of Second Life TARDIS sets.
Oh, nice. I gotta go check that out.
Yeah, no, there's loads. There's Barbie ones and Daisy themed ones. There's all sorts of stuff in Second Life for TARDIS consoles. I've even got some of the more interesting ones. I've even done screen captures for and added to my library of TARDIS pictures. Well, yes, it's been a while for all of you and a week for us, and but we are back with an extra long episode, because I know you love having our episodes be over 2 hours long.
I know one listener or viewer who says that they love it. So they're like, yeah, but we try to keep them brief. We really do.
I don't know. I have been toying with the idea of maybe chopping these things in half and releasing them as 2-parters, but just so that they aren't quite so long. But if you still feel like you need more knowledge of the Time Lords and their TARDISes, go to allthingstimelord.com, and there you can find my website, which has links to the TARDIS PDF and just loads of information. And very soon I'm going to be pushing out a significant update to this website that I've been working on for the past 4 months. It's still nowhere near as up to date as it should be, but it'll have a lot of stuff that wasn't there 4 months ago. So, cool. Sohail, and we can find you on Starfleet Boy, yes?
Starfleet Sohail, I rebranded, but yes. I'm not very active these days. Just we're gonna relaunch soon, hopefully. But you can go check out all my content. Like, there's a ton of stuff. We have discussions for the Next Generation, the original series, and we started doing the animated series, plus all of the new shows from Star Trek Discovery all the way to Star Trek Picard season 3, and just up to we made it to the latest Strange New Worlds. Almost made it to the end there, but everything's up online. So if you watched an episode, the way I recommend doing it is you watch your episode and then you go find the same episode on Starfleet Sohail, and then watch our discussion and tell us what you think. So go check it out. I'm also on TikTok and Twitter.
I apologize for missetting the coordinates, because not only did skipping us several months forward in time screw up this podcast, but it has also caused some problems for Sohail's other podcasts. So.
yes,
but we are back in normal space again. All right.
So yeah, looking forward to the next special, which is coming up next week. So we're going to try to record right after that one as well. So.
Yep. Okay. Let's see if we can see what exactly is going on next week. Got the Here's our time scanner, and I'm going to tell you it. We're going to use the time scanner to see the future, and I'm going to tell you the actual details of the next story, Wild Blue Yonder. Hold on. Let me see if I can tune this thing and adjust the gain. Heisenberg circuits engaged, and it looks like it's set on a spaceship. That's all I can tell. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to wait a week. So I'm sorry. I really wanted to give you the goods because I wanted to spoil that, but I can't seem to find any information other than it's titled Wild Blue Yonder and it looks like it's set on a spaceship, but it might not be. It could be on a space station or an underground complex.
Who knows?
Yes, sadly, he's the only one who does, and he never shows up for the recording sessions.
But oh, it looks like there's a next time on Doctor Who. Did you already see that 2 days ago? I didn't see that, so
yes, I watched it. It's just them running around on a spspaceship saying generic dramatic things. It's frustratingly useless.
That's really funny.
Like it almost feels like they're deliberately trying to annoy me with that trailer.
That's pretty funny. Well, I'm really glad to have joined you. Thanks for having me on once again, and
great.
I look forward to the next one.
Yep. See you guys later in these time and relative dimensions in space.
See you later.